Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel, brought to you in part by our friends at Mint Mobile. I am, of course, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around so we talk about our favorite things in the world: movies, movie news, TV, streaming, all sorts of good stuff. First, a bunch of our regulars sitting right beside me. We got Robert Meyer Burnett back there joining you guys in the live chat. Of course, we've got Ray Orada lurking in the background. We got Taylor. He still has his party favor. Running the show today, Jonathan Voico. Right beside him, we got Kaylee Robinson is joining us here today. And we got a special guest in here today. You've seen him on a couple of our things before, including Best Movie, Worst Movie. You probably also saw him in that world-renowned documentary, Movie Trailers, A Love Story. He is a film documentarian, just recently worked with Ryan Johnson on Knives Out. You've been working a lot with Gerard Butler in films. You've worked with Sylvester Stallone, Kevin Smith, all that kind of stuff. Cliff Stevenson's joining us here today. Cliff,
hello, everyone. Hello. Glad to be here. I'm very excited.
I'm very excited to have you here today for one particular reason, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. And here's how today's show is going to go, guys. We're going to break it into two parts. First half of the show, we're going to talk about some predetermined topics. Then in the second half of the show, we're going to take your live comments and questions. This is how that happens. First, you got to be watching live. Secondly, when we get to the end of the main topics, we'll announce that we're opening up the super chats. We only leave it open for just a couple of minutes, but that will be your chance to fire in your thoughts, theories, opinions, and questions, and we will address those in the last part of the show. All right, guys, we have an absolutely, if you've looked into the show description, we have an absolutely stacked show today, so let's not waste any time and jump right into it, and we're going to start with this. You know, one of the big Oscar buzz is going around right now. As a matter of fact, I would venture to say the only Oscar buzz that's going around that's been using the word lock has been Brendan Fraser for The Whale. A lot of people have been using the term. Not only is he a favorite to get nominated, a lot of people have already handed in the award. And now, of course, he got a lot of acclaim on the festival circuit. He's won a lot of awards on the festival circuit. He looked amazing in the trailer for The Whale. Looks incredible. And this is going to be a tight, I don't see any film anywhere kind of running away with things. But that is the one that seems to kind of been the one star in the northern sky saying, Brendan Fraser is going to get nominated for Best Picture and probably even win it. Well, maybe not. You guys are familiar with the Spirit Awards, the Independent Spirit Awards, which gives out, the awards for what they qualify as independent film and stuff like that. It's a great awards ceremony, a lot of great films getting honored. And there's two big things that stood out. And you can bring that up here now, Jonathan. Number one, Everything Everywhere All at Once leads the pack with the most nominations for Best Performance, Best Directors, Best Feature Film, Best Supporting Performer, Best Writing, Best Directing. I mean, on and on. It just basically swept, which is great because as of this moment, Everything Everywhere All at Once is still my number one favorite film of the year. So I'm thrilled to see that it is swept up in all these different categories. Actually, we'll scroll down here for a second, and we see film category. It's been nominated for Best Picture, nominated for Best Directors, Best Michelle Yeoh for Best Lead Performance. I kind of hope she gets that. Where's the other thing? Jamie Lee Curtis for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Actually, there's some buzz she might get an Oscar nomination for a performance in this as well. It also got nominated for Best Screenplay, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. So 8 nominations in total for Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is great. However, one of the things you might have noticed that is missing from that list is The Whale. The Whale got goose-egged. No nominations. Not a nomination for Best Feature, which has been winning a lot of film festivals. No nomination for Best Director, but most notably, no nomination for Brendan Fraser. And I had to double check. It's like maybe The Whale didn't qualify, but they're saying it qualified. It did qualify. It just didn't get any of these awards. Rob, I mean, you've been seeing and hearing everything that I have. It's kind of been looking like there's this giant snowball rolling downhill, and it's the Brendan Fraser Best Actor momentum. But suddenly the Independent Spirit Awards come along, and he doesn't even get a nomination. Does this surprise you?
Well, I don't know when the release date of the movie is, but did it qualify within their...
According to this, it qualified, yeah.
That's
unless the report is wrong, with the report and Variety saying qualified.
It's pretty shocking. And also, they've combined the categories now, so there's no Best Supporting Actor or Best Supporting Actress. It's now all one category. It's our Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor. It's all Best Performance. So, I don't know.
It releases on the 9th.
of December.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so it comes
Well,
out in theater tonight.
Sure.
Does qualify.
Wow, that's pretty amazing, man. I don't know. I don't know what that means. It's interesting.
Cliff, I mean, again, this seems to have been the performance that's caught everybody's imaginations. And listen, just because it doesn't get nominated for the Independent Spirit Awards does not necessarily mean the Academy voters will see it the same way. But
Right.
could this have an impact? Were you surprised to see this?
Well, as Rob said, I mean, because the Independent Spirit Awards combined the male and female performances into one category, you have to wonder if there was some element of that's just a very crowded category when you combine the men and the women all together, which is
Right.
kind of the way it should be anyway. I don't understand why you separate it by gender. It's not like that makes a difference. But I do wonder if this happening this way might have the opposite effect, might have the effect of people going like, God, they kind of blew this movie off. We need to actually pay more attention to it in the upcoming awards that happened, to not snub him or to
Right.
not, that where somebody might have said, oh, Brendan Fraser's a lock. I'm not going to worry about it. I want to put my energy towards this actor, this actress, or they might now actually shift their focus to him to make sure that he does get recognized. It is odd, but and also without having seen the movie, you're also going by what everybody else has said.
I mean, that's the thing.
And-
What
and,
happened to the festivals, all that kind of stuff.
who knows? I mean, he certainly seems like he's getting all the love. He's getting all these accolades. But I wonder if it could be a little bit of the reverse push on him, where it actually does give him some benefit moving into Oscar season, where people don't want to see him
Get overlooked.
get overlooked because they feel like, oh, he got snubbed on the Independent Spirit Awards. And look, if you're going to get snubbed on something, get snubbed on the Independent Spirit Awards and get an Oscar nomination. Like, that'd be
Then
my
you'll
way
be
to go.
fine. All right, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Obviously, there's been a lot of talk in movie circles about Brendan Fraser and The Whale. Some people calling it a lock that he's going to win Best Actor. Doesn't get a nomination at the Independent Spirit Awards. Do you think that means anything? Do you think it won't mean anything at the end of the day? Whatever you think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's get into another off the top here, and that is this. We talked about it yesterday, that the final Avatar 2 was going to be coming out with Monday Night Football. Ann and I were out at a restaurant eating some wings when halftime hit, and sure enough, the trailer came on. I could barely hear a thing. So I watched the trailer. I'm like, okay, this looks beautiful. I'm not sure I know anything more about the film, though. I'll probably get to know a lot more once I go home and watch it and I can hear everything. Went home and watched it again. Still don't really know anything more about the movie. But I will say this. Oh, my God, this movie is gorgeous. Because it looked good on the TV screen in the sports bar. But I got home and I went to the John Campea Show theater room, popped it up on there, and I'm like, oh, my God, this is gorgeous. It's beautiful. But it's the final trailer, and I still don't really know what this movie's about. And I guarantee you this is going to hurt them. I really do. This movie's going to make a lot of money. Make no mistake. It's going to make tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of money. But it will underperform. It will not live up to its full potential because, I don't know, every time we've gone on about this movie is not letting anybody know what's going to be, then everybody says, well, John, they shouldn't give anything away in the trailer. And then the movie comes out and it flops and they go, gosh, I wonder why it flopped. Because you never actually told the audience what your fucking movie's about. You just, I made this analogy before and it's totally applicable. It's like walking into Best Buy and seeing just a blank white box on the shelf. Blank white box, $20. And you ask, oh, hey, what is this? Don't worry about it. We're Best Buy. We sell good stuff. You trust us, right? $20, just buy the blank box. I don't know that I want to put down $20 if I don't know what it is I'm buying. Just, you don't have to tell me you don't have to give me the schematic details of every circuit board. Just tell me what the product is. Nah, it'll be fun that it's a surprise. And we've seen a number of big high profile movies take this approach and then they end up flopping. And then everybody goes, and again, this movie is not going to flop. Avatar 2, The Way of Water, is going to make tons of money. But I guarantee you, in them making this big sales pitch, because that's what trailers are, they're your sales pitch. You're not even telling people what the movie's about. Again, there is a difference. I hate getting these lame jackasses who write to me and goes, well, John, what do you want them to just give everything away? Oh, yeah, because that's the only two options, right? Tell you nothing or tell you everything. There's nothing else. That's it. That's the only thing. Trailers for 75 years have been made, never being able to find the middle ground of telling you what the movie's about without giving away major details. Anyway, there's that. So listen, on one hand, I'm torn because this is a beautiful trailer. And I loved looking at it. And I'm buying my ticket without a trailer. It doesn't matter. I'm going, but I'm not the people they got to worry about. But I just can't believe you're 3 trailers in and what's this about? And they have not given us one lick about what this movie's actually about, other than, well, humanity's back. Well, okay, yeah, we figured that. And, well, there's going to be a fight. Okay, we figured that with any movie. I don't know. I was frustrated. As somebody who's really looking forward to this movie and who believes in its success, I was just frustrated that we didn't even get a lick of what this is about. Anyway, Rob, you saw the trailer. What did you interpret from it?
Well, I mean, look, it's spectacular looking.
It's
I mean, the underwater motion capture stuff, you can tell those actors are actually underwater. That it's amazing. But I would say that I think they told us a little bit, like, obviously our tribe that we know goes to the sea and is displaced, and the people that are there are not necessarily pleased to see them. Like, you have to, if you want to stay here, you have to learn how to hunt. You have to learn our ways. You have to learn the way of water. If you're going to be a part of this.
Sorry, quick one thought, because you just remind me of something. One of the most interesting things about this, what's the race called again? The Na'vi?
Na'vi.
The Na'vi have different ethnicities.
Yes.
I didn't notice it until, I'm sure other people did, but I didn't notice it until this trailer, that the shade of blue that Sully is and his family is a different shade of blue than what this other tribe is. And so it's like, oh, actually that's pretty cool that they're having that even the Na'vi have different ethnicities.
And I'm sure that's all going to come into play.
Probably.
You know, the different, the ethnicities and all that. And I, obviously that the unobtainium is still probably something everyone's looking for.
Great name, by the way. Fabulous name.
And they, other than that, I don't really know what's going on. Other than love is in the air, John. Young love, old love, people are in love.
That's always good. That never goes wrong.
No, never goes wrong. No jealousy there.
Cliff, you had a chance.
And the new Na'vi are pretty cool.
They are. Yeah. No, everything visually.
I call them the Maori, because they have facial tattoos like that are very Maori-esque. You know what this reminded me of? There's a great movie directed by Jeff Murphy, who is the second unit director on Lord of the Rings, called Utu, that stars, I think, Tamora Morrison.
I thought that was the band that Bono sings for. Sorry, please. That was.
I'm just saying.
That was I would not give myself the drum chef for that. That was terrible. That was awful.
It's a Maori warlord. The movie's fantastic, and I don't know why. There's no reason. I guess just because whenever I see Maori people, when I was in New Zealand, I always wanted to ask everybody. There it is. That movie is dope, and look at those facial tattoos. Very Avatar Way of Water-esque.
Anyway, Cliff, you had a chance to see this trailer. What did you think about it?
I'm with you. This feels like it's a weird convergence, because it feels like they're saying, it's Avatar, right? Like, look at the name and look at, they're blue, and they're sort of piling on all of this iconography, but they're not really selling the story, and they're kind of selling the brand. But but the brand is like,
that's what Blade Runner 2049 did too.
Right.
They sold the brand. They didn't sell the.
But it's like, it's been what, 13 years?
It's
like,
been.
And the brand is like, okay, the brand is fine. Like, I'm not a huge Avatar fan. Sorry. But
no one's perfect.
They need to be able to. I know there was a lot of you guys that liked Avatar. No, I'm just kidding. But they're kind of selling just the fact that it's Avatar, and kind of coasting on goodwill that I don't know that they have. And so, like, yesterday, no, look, I bought my tickets yesterday, but I didn't have any problem buying tickets. It wasn't like a Marvel movie or a Star Wars movie or something where you went in and it was like, it was crunch time when those tickets went on sale and Fandango crashed and this crashed. And it was like, I went in, a couple hours after tickets had already gone on sale. And I was like, oh, I got really good seats. And I got the Dolby Cinema at this one, or I got the Chinese. We're going to go see it at the Chinese. It wasn't hard to do. And to me, that speaks to what you're saying, which is I think that there's going to be a lack of enthusiasm moving into it. And now, if this movie is great,
It'll have legs.
it'll have legs, and that's all it really needs to do. And that's certainly what the first one did, and that's what Titanic did, and James Cameron. That's kind of his brand is legs. But if Disney especially is going into this thinking we're going to have a massive opening weekend, I think that they are maybe setting themselves up a little bit for failure, because I don't know that it is going to be as front loaded as some people think it is.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to catch. I don't think it'll hit like Wakanda Forever's. What was Wakanda Forever's 181?
Yeah.
I don't think it'll catch Wakanda Forever's
No.
181 for opening. But then again, that's not been James Cameron's brand, right?
Then
he
again, I
released his
didn't
movie.
think Top Gun was going to make 100 million opening weekend. So what do I know?
Yeah. So, but I mean, his movies come out. Everybody realizes, oh my God, this is brilliant, and then it has massive legs. So we'll have to see whether that's the case. Question is for you guys: what did you think about the trailer for Avatar 2: The Way of Water? A couple of interesting things. Gorgeous visuals. I really like the fact that the Na'vi have different ethnicities in them and stuff like that. But I'm kind of frustrated that they're, like you said, I love the way you put, they're not selling the story.
Let me ask you one quick question. They've had 3 trailers, correct?
Yes.
If you swapped the order of those 3 trailers, would you notice?
Nope, there was no progression.
no.
The best ad campaigns for these movies, they have a progression.
Right.
There's the first teaser gives you a little bit of, this is what's coming. This is kind of the feel of this. Then the second trailer comes out, they start to establish what it is. And then the third trailer comes and it completes the story of the marketing, right? This is how much we're going to tell you, and it ends there. With The Way of Water, it could have been interchanged. You could have really had any of these trailers in any order you wanted.
I think that the thing that I'm most intrigued by is at the end of Avatar, the Na'vi kind of kicked out humanity and won. You saw the humanity kind of leaving, and the Na'vi had taken over their encampment. But in this movie, we have Jake Sully and his family are displaced, and they're back in force. Or I'm
Well, we
curious-
all
You say
knew
that you say that with a very questionable vocal inflection, like maybe.
Well,
I'm curious though about this intervening stuff. So there's stuff that's happened, things that are gone down. I'm curious to see like what all that was, because I'm sure James Cameron is going to have a lot of commentary about displaced Indigenous people and a lot of that. And they didn't put that in the trailer because I'm sure they're like, we don't need to show people the political ramifications of this plot.
Trailer.
But
All
I'm
right.
curious.
Question is for you guys. What did you think of the trailer? Whatever your thoughts are, jump down to the comment section below and leave those thoughts there. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to a third off the top, and that one is this. You mentioned Top Gun Maverick a little bit ago, and we're going to be talking about it a little bit more later, but it's time. Top Gun Maverick is coming to streaming. It has now been announced that Paramount has set the launch date for Top Gun Maverick on Paramount Plus, and it will be December 22nd. Now, Taylor, you're going to have to look this up for me about what was the theatrical release date of Top Gun Maverick, because we now live in a world where it's
May
40.
27th.
Which day?
I think it was May 27th.
Yeah, May 27th.
May 27th? So May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. This is like more than double the length of the old theatrical window, right? This is more than double what the old theatrical, the 90-day theatrical window was. And now we've got it coming out here on December 22nd on Paramount Plus streaming. We've talked a lot about the fact that Tom Cruise fought hard to keep this movie in theaters and for it not to go straight to streaming like some studio executives want to. Thankfully, the more powerful studio executives decided they agreed with Tom Cruise to keep it in theater. We already saw how they were rewarded with that. Now we got the second part of that. What about extending that theatrical window? Instead of going the 45 days, which they would have lost out on a bunch of money, but still, they could have done 60 days, it could have whatever. They had this big stretch. And here's the funny thing. I predict that the day Top Gun Maverick lands on Paramount Plus will be the biggest single day subscriber sign up that Paramount's ever had. And this will blow away the erroneous misconception that the faster you get something onto streaming, the better it is. And I think Top Gun Maverick is going to buck that and show, actually, if you treat a movie like it's something special, people will react to it like it's something special. And so I think this is really interesting that's coming out. But finally, coming to Paramount Plus, We won't go into your overall love of Top Gun Maverick because we're going to talk about that.
I got
for a
that
little bit
pocketed
later.
right now. Yeah.
But what do you think about this? The release date coming. What do you think about them waiting so long? What are your thoughts?
What's really interesting about this is it also bucks the Paramount Plus trend of putting these things on Paramount Plus the same day as you put them on digital. So,
Right, yeah.
So like, you know, for example, Smile just came out on iTunes and Vudu and everything else, but it showed up on Paramount Plus the same day. So what that does is if I'm a Paramount Plus subscriber, there's no reason for me to buy Smile. I already paid for Paramount Plus. By withholding Top Gun from Paramount Plus, you had a theatrical window, you had a digital window, you had a physical media window because it's now out on disc, and then you get to the
benefits of
Paramount
streaming.
Plus streaming, which is kind of the way it should be. It's like monetize this movie as much as you can so that when you get to your streaming platform, you've already made, like, that's now just cream on top. You know, and I've never understood this logic of like, well, throw it out the same day as your digital release and cannibalize your digital sales, or throw it out before your when you actually would put it up for sale somewhere. So I think in every other way that this movie has sort of bucked trends and defeated the norms of what everybody else was doing, and has been proven right at every single step. It was, you know, the biggest digital sale of the time. It's a huge physical seller. It was obviously a huge theatrical seller. So none of these things you could point to and go, well, see, look where Paramount screwed that up because they did this in the wrong order. They did this other thing. And I think you're right. On December 22nd, right before Christmas, when you're going to have all kinds of families gathering, you're going to have people that are like, oh, that's available for, you know, whatever my Paramount Plus subscription is going to be. And we can watch it again if you don't already own it. And that it's like, that's kind of the way it should be. And so I think that it's perfect timing. And it is, if you wait it out, your audience will wait for you. You don't have to rush this thing out.
All right. And it builds the anticipation.
Yeah.
Rob, you're taking a look at this, the approach they take. This was very much an old school approach to distributing the movie. It seems to have worked for it. What's your takeaways from this?
Well, I think that this was not the original plan. I thought Paramount pivoted well once they saw how well this movie was absolutely doing. And look, to me, the way this film was put out and promoted, and we could see this at CinemaCon, they knew they had liquid gold. I mean, they knew. And I would love to have been like the head of distribution at Paramount watching this movie for the first time. I wonder if somebody picked up a phone and said, you know, Brian Ben or whoever the name, it's not Brian Ben, but the new
From Dream On.
Dream On. Who's the head of Paramount? It's Brian somebody.
Yeah.
You know, somebody had to call and go, this should not be a 45-day window. And I'm sure they changed all their plans and they played it perfectly. And I think that everything they've done with this film, they've maximized. You're pushing $1.5 billion at the box office. Then, like you said, they smartly released it on pay per, what is it?
VOD.
VOD, PVS, VOD, whatever. Pay for that on all the different platforms, so you had to pay. Then they released it on physical media, which, by the way, is unbelievable. And now it's going to streaming. They've literally wrung every dollar out of this in I think, a proper manner, because you're looking at, it's 6 months. You know,
209 days.
They let this play out over 6 months, and they have. That's the way movies should. I mean, not every movie's Top Gun Maverick, but that's the way to play it.
Is it weird that we're saying, because who would have thought this, that probably the best run studio the last 2 years is Paramount? When you look at
It's astonishing.
I don't think
it's
they've
been
lost
winning.
money.
But I also think this goes to how these things are cyclical. And you think back to like Paramount in the 80s where they had Beverly Hills Cop and Raiders of the Lost Ark. And, you know, they could sort of do no wrong in the 80s. And then they kind of fall off. And this studio
fell off
comes
for a
up.
while.
But now it's like, you know, Disney seems to be having more trouble than they've had previously. And Paramount is... But I think that it speaks to kind of the cyclical nature of the studios and how just because something is, you know, Universal, you could write Universal off for years and years and years. And then all of a sudden Universal starts making Fast and Furious movies that are making $1 billion. And it's like every studio will come around, but Paramount especially
All right, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Top Gun Maverick is coming to Paramount Plus on December 22nd. I know a lot of people are excited about it. And listen, I'm already kind of predisposed to Paramount Plus because they got Tulsa King, and Paramount's also got extended wise. They got Yellowstone, which is my favorite show on TV, but I really like Paramount Plus. Are you going to sign up for it too just because of Top Gun? I think a lot of people are. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and leave those thoughts there. All right. With that down, let's do a fourth off the top here, shall we? I told you we had a full show here today, guys. And that one is this. You know, one of the most kind of beloved action franchises, maybe the most beloved action franchise out there right now, is the John Wick franchise. And of course, we got a new John Wick coming out, which everybody's stoked about, but there's also a spin-off movie, Ballerina, that's going to have Ana de Armas. Now, of course, as soon as they said Ballerina, we of course think back to John Wick 3, and we met a whole bunch of new characters. One of the most interesting characters, though, was Angelica Houston. And now the reports have come out. This has been verified by the Hollywood Reporter that Angelica Houston is joining up with the Ballerina movie. She will be joining Ana de Armas in this thing and reprising her role that we saw her in John Wick 3. Now, I always say, number one, it's never a mistake to add talent. Angelica Houston, world-class talent. Love seeing her whenever she's on screen. But more important than that, I love that this character's coming back. The moment this character popped, and I didn't love all the new characters in John Wick Chapter 3, but this is one of them that I adored from the moment she came on, the way she talked and carried herself, just everything about that character. And what Angelica Houston brought to it, I absolutely ate up. I was hoping we would hear this news. It's here. Angelica Houston is joining Ballerina. Rob, you hear about this. How significant is this for Ballerina?
Oh, I think it's totally significant because, I mean, I would assume that she's the matriarch of where they're being trained, you know, the Ballerina Academy. Talk about ballerinas. We were talking about pirouettes just before the show started. I love this. I've always loved Angelica Houston. I mean, she's a formidable presence. Whenever she shows up in movies, wasn't she in, what was the Wes Anderson movie that she was in? Was it Life Aquatic?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Steve Zissou,
Yeah. One of my favorite. I love that movie. A lot of people are not. That's not their Wes Anderson jam. I thought she was great in that. She does not show up enough. I love seeing her in full-on Dragon Lady mode. Even the poster they have of that movie, that teaser poster was amazing. I can't wait for this. I think it's going to be great, especially after Ana de Armas is coming off of No Time to Die.
Yeah, everybody loved her in that.
I expect her to kick ass, man. Kick ass.
Cliff, you hear about this? Big deal, not a big deal? Like, do you think this is going to draw a lot more attention to it, or is this just a quality issue?
I don't know that it's going to draw a lot more attention, but I think from, you know, John Wick, the John Wick franchise has always been strongest when it leans into its mythology and when it has really established this world and the world building that they've done within this franchise. And so by bringing her into this movie, it solidifies that world building and it creates an even stronger foundation. I mean, again, you know, Anna coming off of No Time to Die, where you saw Paloma and you were like,
and
I just want to, you know, but I mean, that specific character where you're just like, I want to see a movie about her.
Yeah.
Where she's just kicking ass and a spy. And it's like, this is kind of a version of what we all wanted out of No Time to Die. So it's like, we're already going to get that. Then you get Angelica Houston to come in, which just sort of underlines how strong and interconnected all of this whole, because now it feels like it's going to be even more fused to the John Wick story and not just a spin-off that's kind of its own thing, that it will have some sort of connective tissue to John Wick, and then it will feel like part, because I love the idea that it's not just a spin-off, that it is something that is like was hinted at in this, and now we're going to go explore some more in this. And, you know, Keanu, I think we heard, is going to be in, you know, he's going to make an appearance in it. And so it's like, it's very exciting. And, you know, Angelica Houston, I mean,
and Angelica Houston. All right, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Angelica Houston is joined up with the John Wick spinoff, Ballerina. I think it's a really exciting turn of events there. I love the way Cliff put that. That is, this franchise works best when they build into their mythology, and that's what this does. How do you guys feel about it? Whatever those thoughts are, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. If you're going to be a male ballerina, what you don't want is a lot of stubbly hair friction down in the nether regions. But good news, our sponsors today, the friends at Manscaped, are here to help you out. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Manscaped. This holiday season, I'll be giving thanks to our friends over at Manscaped. Everyone loves turkey and stuffing, but you'll be looking like dessert with the help of Manscaped's Performance Package 4.0. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming have blessed you with the ultimate Thanksgiving dinner topic. Tell your in-laws about your new cutting-edge ball trimmer and gift yourself or the man in your life the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Trim up your pumpkins by going to manscaped.com and use the code Campea for free shipping and 20% off. And this year I am so thankful for Manscaped because like most of you guys, I used to use Neanderthalic Dark Age methods to trim my balls. Not anymore, thanks to Manscaped. It's time for all of us to give thanks to Manscaped Performance Package 4.0, or as I like to call it, the perfect package for your package. Inside, you'll find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, Performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold all your goodies. The heart of the package, their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code Campea at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the promo code Campea. Be thankful this holiday season for the best gift of all from Manscaped. Your balls will thank you. And thank you to our friends at Manscaped for keeping my dreams of being a male ballerina alive and being a sponsor of this episode of the John Campea Show. All right, guys, with that down, we've got one more off the top, and that's this. All right, let me preface this by saying, you guys know that I am not in the scoop business at all. I think scoop business is a folly. And while I've had some things that were big before, I've also been burned. I think back to when I said that the Ant-Man was going to be the pianist actor from
Adrian Brody.
I always freeze on Adrian Brody's name. I had found out definitively Adrian Brody's going to be Ant-Man. Oh my God. And I reported it until the next day. I got an email from Edgar Wright saying, that's interesting. He's not. So, I don't really do scoops. So don't consider this a scoop, but I want to talk about something that's connected to the Bob Iger hiring yesterday. One of the questions that I had pop up numerous times over the past 24 hours about whether or not about the whole Bob Iger situation was, I had a lot of people write in and ask, now that Iger's back, do you think that means Kathy Kennedy's gone? And I had a lot of people write that to me on social media, in the comments, writing to me directly, asking about that. And my response to that was, well, no, if anything, it's the opposite. Bob Iger has traditionally been a Kathleen Kennedy ally. And with Bob Iger coming back, I have a feeling that will entrench her even more. And she will probably stay out to the end of her contract. I mean, I've said for a while, I don't think she lasts beyond the end of this new contract she's got. I think she's out either by or shortly after 2025. I think she's out. I do think she needs to move on. I've said that for a long time. But I said, I think Iger coming back only kind of more entrenches her there. All right. Sometimes I will say something on a show, and then, like in the case of Edgar Wright, I will get contacted by certain people in the know that would say to me, hey, you said this. Yeah. Oh, it was a great show, but you're wrong. I will tell you this. Last night, in the last 14 hours, last night I got an email from somebody very connected. And then this morning I got a phone call from somebody even more connected that got in touch with me, two separate people completely independent of each other, that got a hold of me saying, oh, John, you said that Kathleen Kennedy's going to be more entrenched now that Iger's. I'm like, yeah, you're wrong. This is what I have heard. I have heard that the decision to remove Kathy Kennedy has already been made and that she will be gone either sometime before or very, very, very shortly thereafter the release of Indiana Jones 5, which comes out when? In May or June or July, something like that. Now, I want to be very, very clear here. I cannot independently say to you and confirm that this is a fact. I will say that one of the two people that have contacted me has 1,000% average on the things they've informed me of. They've informed me, they're the ones who have informed me of a couple of things that I nailed and was right about. The other one usually has been correct, but not 100%. So, and I got to say this too. I hope this does not turn out to be true, because that means I was right when I said that Bob Iger was an ally of Kathy Kennedy and that it more entrenches her. But, here's the thing, we take what information we have at hand and we base opinions and thoughts on what information we have. When new information gets introduced, intelligent people will reassess what their opinion is. And look, again, I am not telling you to write anything in stone, but I will tell you that I have been contacted by a couple of people who are extremely close to the situation. And apparently, and I'll say, I trusted enough that I'll say aloud that it looks like, and I believe it now looks like, that I was incorrect yesterday when I said that she was more secure now than she was before with Iger back. That apparently the decision for her to move on has in fact already been made. And now it's just a question of timing as to when they'll announce to the world. Rob, you and I were talking about this prior to the show starting. And, one of the things that we discussed and that you brought up too was that, if you are Disney, and even if the decision's been made already, do you really want to make that announcement prior to Indiana Jones coming out? You've got some momentum going for Indiana Jones. Do you now want the topic of conversation to be Indiana Jones 5, for which she is the executive producer? Do you want the conversation to be Indiana Jones, or do you want the conversation to be of Kathy Kennedy leaving? So I don't know, but what I will tell everybody is that, expect to hear about her leaving either imminently, because if you're going to do it before the release of Indiana Jones, if you're going to let people know about it before that, they got to do it quick, because you're going to want to have some buffer between when you announce that and when Indiana Jones 5 comes out. Or they're going to wait until Indiana Jones 5 comes out, make some announcement later. But again, what I am hearing is that the decision's been made. She's out. Whether or not that turns out to be 100% accurately true, we'll find out in the coming days. But anyway, Rob, does this make sense to you? Does this line up for you? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it does. It actually does make sense, because one, she's been president of Lucasfilm for a decade now. And basically, in the last couple of years, you got to give her a win because ever since 2019, you've got Mandalorian, Disney Plus coming out. Whether you liked Obi-Wan Kenobi or Book of Boba Fett, big numbers for Disney Plus. Andor, critically acclaimed. Willow, we don't know, but it seems to be critically acclaimed.
Looks good.
And then the Indiana Jones franchise, the last Indiana Jones movie. I mean, the family, the Kathleen Kennedy, Frank Marshall family, they're married. I mean, Frank Marshall, it was in Raiders, so it's to cap off her tenure at Lucasfilm. I don't see it as a referendum to get rid of her. I think it's a celebration of the time she was there, and that Indiana Jones got made. It's not just part of Kathleen Kennedy's life. It's part of Amblin. It's part of Lucasfilm, and I think it's a really great time to go, because no one can say she's not going to go. We're going to replace her because she did a terrible job. She's one of the greatest producers. I mean, I was telling you just this morning, I was using ET to calibrate my sound system. She produced that. That was her first producing gig. That was 40 years ago. She produced our childhoods. And this weird animosity that fanboys have blamed her for everything wrong with Star Wars. She's not a Star Wars fan. She's a movie producer. She's a nuts and bolts movie producer. I mean, she produced Seabiscuit. She's done a lot.
I like Seabiscuit.
I love Seabiscuit. And I think going out, I would imagine they'll probably wait and they'll celebrate her. Indiana Jones 5, whatever it's called, is a celebration of her tenure at Lucasfilm, which was a decade. And if you're in your 60s, that's 1/6 of your life you spent as president of Lucasfilm. I think I've always been a fan of hers. I've always defended her on the show. I've defended her on my own show. I'm a big fan. I think she's going to go out with a win and leave gracefully.
I believe in giving credit where credit's due, right? And a lot of people forget the reason she's in this position is because George Lucas handpicked her to be in this. George Lucas is the one who put Kathy Kennedy in this position. So people need to remember that. I have said for years now that she needs to move on. But that being said, I say that as somebody who is a big admirer of Kathleen Kennedy. Spielberg has said that he believes she is the single most gifted producer he's ever worked with. That's the greatest filmmaker of all time saying that. She has had indisputably a number of big wins at Star Wars. like multiple billion-dollar films, some big successful stuff on TV. She's had some big wins. For me, though, the juxtaposition of that is that she's had some major pitfalls. And that, to me, is the two most important jobs she had. One, planning out the overall structure, what Star Wars is, which clearly they'd never had. They went into the sequel trilogy having no plan whatsoever. And secondly, making sure you bring on the right storytellers. And what we saw, especially in the first 5 years, is project after project after project after project of her having to separate with directors they had hired or writers they had brought on, most infamously getting 3/4 the way through making a film with Solo with Lord Miller, only then to realize that they weren't on the same page. And so I thought she needs to go. But in my opinion, nonetheless, she's a first ballot Hall of Famer in Hollywood. She's one of the greatest producers of all time. And when she does leave, she's going to get a big fat first look deal. She will continue to produce movies. Anyway, Cliff, you hear about this. Does this surprise you? Maybe you don't buy into it. I don't know. What do you think?
Okay. Here we go. So, okay, based on what both of you have already said, Kathleen Kennedy, fantastic producer, but there are two types of producers. There is a nuts and bolts producer who can get you 15,000 snakes in Tunisia on Tuesday. And there are creative producers who are fantastically just creative. And my problem with Kathleen Kennedy is she spent the bulk of her career next to the greatest director of all time. And I don't know how much of that muscle she really had to exercise. Like when you're sitting next to Steven Spielberg and he knows the movie in his head before he shot it, how much of that creative muscle memory do you have to create? And I think what we saw with Lucasfilm and her heading Lucasfilm was the atrophy of that muscle memory, was her not being able to identify certain talents or not being able to identify creative problems when she saw them, but being able to handle the physical production part of it. And so when something happens, you replace the director, you do this, or you do the, you know. So I think that the biggest issue and the reason why I think that she probably does need to go, it's not whether or not she's had a bunch of wins in the last 5 years. It is what has happened to the brand in the last couple of years.
Right.
And when you go online, and again, I know it's all fanboys and it's people that love to complain about stuff, but the reality is when you talk to people, there is not an enthusiasm for Star Wars the way there should be. There is not an enthusiasm for the brand the way that you would think with all these new movies, with the new series, with all these things. The fact that we're like, well, yeah, you made an Obi-Wan movie or an Obi-Wan show, but not great, or you did a Boba Fett thing, but it didn't seem like it had a point. And you know, and there's this consistent lack of planning that goes into, we're just going to make a new thing. And the fact that the brand has now been damaged in a way where they kind of had to step back and go, okay, we're not going to make any more movies for a little while. Let's recalibrate. Let's figure out what we're going to do. That's not what you want to do. That's certainly not what Marvel has done. You know, Marvel is like, they might have a miss, but they push forward and then they kind of figure out what they're going to do. And so I think that her big miss in all of her hits is not being a fan of Star Wars, that she was not a fan of the thing that she was in charge of shepherding. And so when it came time to produce all this stuff, you didn't have somebody that was really standing there to protect it the way that maybe Jon Favreau does, or maybe Dave Filoni does, or some of the people that are actual fans of this stuff and know they know the mythology, they know the characters, they know who Cad Bane is. So they know that the fans are going to be excited when they see that character brought into live action, or they know that, you know. And so to me, that was really the misstep of Kathleen Kennedy. And again, great producer, but a very great nuts and bolts producer, one of the greatest producers of all time. But how many creative decisions did she make on ET? Probably not a lot. she's sitting next to Spielberg, and Spielberg knows this movie. So that's where I feel like it's probably overdue. Now, whether or not this happens before Indiana Jones, I mean, we're still kind of in like nothing's really happened with Indiana Jones. I mean, I'm assuming maybe a trailer.
The Empire covers have come out. The trailer's dropping any minute now.
I mean, I'm assuming the trailer comes around Avatar time, that they're gonna use that to launch it. So, and obviously Harrison Ford has a relationship with her, and you don't want to sully his experience going into this, but also Disney can't afford for something to go wrong with that brand either.
All right, guys. Question is for you. What do you think about this? I have been told by sources that I trust, but hey, I've been told stuff by sources before that I trust that turns out to be 100% true, but sometimes it hasn't. So take this with a grain of salt. But I've been informed that the decision to remove Kathy Kennedy from Lucasfilm has already been made. Now it's just a matter of when they're going to publicly announce it, whether it's going to be before or just after Indy 5. What do you think about that? Do you believe that? Do you think the information that we have available to us lines up with that? Maybe you don't believe it at all. Maybe you think it needs to happen sooner, or maybe you think it needs to happen later. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that all down, Kaylee, what do we got up next here?
Next up is our Mint Mobile hotline question of the day. If you have a question for us and want to let your voice be heard on the show, go ahead and call the number on the screen, 951-268-4259. Our first question comes to us from Stefan. He's asking about the new trailer for Inside with William Dafoe.
Hey, John and crew. This is Stefan from Atlanta. I've been a big fan of your show for over a decade now. I just saw the first trailer for Inside starring Willem Dafoe, and it kind of reminds me of Buried by Ryan Reynolds with the single setting they're going for there, and it looks insane. I'm so hyped for this movie, and I wanted to know what you guys thought about it. Thanks, and bring on the filthy.
All right, Stefan, thanks a lot for calling that in. I'll tell you what, when I was first watching the trailer, I thought, I don't know that I buy Willem Dafoe as an art thief. I don't know. That's just my own head. That's because, the first few seconds, all you see is the actor. You don't see the character, right? So I'm thinking, I don't know if I see this. I don't know if this is working for me or not. Once the trailer progresses and you get into what it's actually about, and it becomes a horror thriller, a survival kind of thing, like it almost felt like a jigsaw trap in Saw or something. Like, what's he willing to do to get out of this thing? And you're seeing the temperature rise. And as a Canadian who's very sensitive to heat, I was sweating watching this thing. And you're right. I love what you said there about the fact that it has Ryan Reynolds Buried feels to it. And that's a movie I'll constantly talk about that you really got to check out. It's very underrated, very appreciated. A lot of people have not seen that. You should watch Ryan Reynolds Buried. It's fantastic. But this gave me a lot of feels of that. And then I instantly went from, I don't know if I buy Willem Dafoe as an art thief, to, wait a minute. I'm sure there's going to be scenes with multiple characters. We've seen the trailer, but I think 90% of this movie is going to be him alone in a room. And I thought, you give Willem Dafoe that kind of a platform to show what kind of fucking acting mutant power he has. This could be really special. Like, this could be really, really good. And by the end of that trailer, I was like, you ever get to the end of the trailer and you wish there was another trailer to watch right away? That's how I felt about this. I thought it looked great. Rob, you had a chance to see the trailer for Inside. What did you think of it?
Well, I watched this over the weekend. I'd never heard of this movie. I didn't know anything about it. And I'll watch anything that Willem Dafoe's in, mainly because I've loved him since Catherine Bigelow's first movie, The Loveless, and To Live and Die in L.A. and Streets of Fire and things like that back in the 80s. I watched this trailer and I'm like, at first I'm like, okay, art thief. What is this, like Thomas Crown Affair, whatever? And then it turns into what it turns into. And I suddenly was like, this is catnip to me. This kind of, and watching this man, watching him disintegrate faced with his great adversity, I couldn't imagine a more entertaining actor in this role going absolutely nuts. Because he's the kind of actor, Willem Dafoe is fearless. I mean, watch movies like Lars von Trier's Antichrist. I mean, he'll do anything. And watching him do this, I'm like, when does this movie come out? I can't wait to see it. I mean, it looks great to me. And I wonder though, I got a prediction. I'm like, is this whole thing one big art piece? Is he been tricked into becoming the center of an art piece of his own or some crazy?
That's some M. Night Shyamalan shit
I know,
there.
I know. But I watched this trailer, dude. I'm like, I'm in. Count me in.
Cliff, you had a chance to watch this trailer this morning. What did you think of it?
I had known nothing about this as well. It's interesting that the movie that came to mind when I saw it was kind of an inverse Panic Room, where instead of a thief trying to get into a room, it's a thief trying to get out of a room.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's true.
I looked it up on IMDb after I watched the trailer. There's only 4 actors that are credited currently.
Yes.
Now that could obviously change, but right now there's only 4 characters that are listed on IMDb for this movie.
And 3 of them are on the telephone.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing about this movie is it's an idea that it's one of those that you watch and you go, how did nobody think of this already? Like it's such a simple concept of a thief getting stuck somewhere and the temperature rising and basically him being trapped and figuring out how he's going to survive. And you're just like, God, that's such a simple concept that I cannot believe this movie has not been made before.
You know what, John? It reminded me, we met a viewer of this show, and we went to lunch or dinner with him after we saw one of the screenings. One of our screenings.
Yes.
And maybe it was Spider-Man. And he pitched me an idea that was very similar to this. And I'm like, maybe he got it made. And maybe it's our viewer.
Well, that would have been a real fast turnaround.
It would have been, but I mean, it was the kind of thing where because it wasn't exactly what he'd pitched, but it was really similar. And the first thing I thought of, if it's you, well done.
I would be curious how long this took, because it seems like a very simple movie to make. It's essentially one location, one actor. Like, could you make this in?
But this
2
looks
weeks?
like one of these movies that could have been sitting on the shelf for 3 years. Like I almost feel like this was maybe shot before Spider-Man.
Or this is a movie that was perfect for COVID because
Yeah.
you could do it with one actor and a skeleton crew.
Yeah, it did need a lot. Also, I also love the little feeling of the fish called Wanda moment in there when he starts to have to eat the fish. I was cool. Anyway, guys, question is for you. Did you guys have a chance to see the trailer for Willem Dafoe's Inside? If so, what did you think about it? We liked it a lot around here. Whatever you guys thought, jump down to the comment section below and leave your thoughts there. All right, guys. With that down, let's now move finally, I told you there was a lot of stuff today, into our main topics here today, shall we? And how do we select our main topics on the show? Well, that's easy. You guys come up with our main topics. See, whenever you come across a big topic, issue, or story that you guys feel we need to cover as a main topic here on the show, just go anytime 24/7 over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's absolutely free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submission featured as a main topic here on the John Campea Show. All right. That down, let's get into main topic number 1. And this main topic actually doesn't have an email from one of you guys. This is a little something I want to do today. We were talking a little bit earlier about Top Gun Maverick and all the wild success it has, from the unbelievable $1.4 billion at the box office to then cracking records on VOD and sales. And now it's going to be coming out on Paramount Plus. It's probably going to break all kind of Paramount Plus records for single day signups and stuff like that. Terrific. I told you guys 2 years ago, when I was at CinemaCon and they showed us the first 18 minutes of that movie, they showed us the first bit of the movie all the way up to after he crashes and he comes walking into the diner. They showed us all that. And I was stunned by how good it was. And you guys know I was buzzing about it ever since then. Then at this past CinemaCon, they showed us the full movie. And we came out and we told you guys this was incredible, except for Chris Carr. She was not so impressed with it, but that's fine. She was the only one, but all the rest of us absolutely loved it. That being said, though, while I loved the movie and you guys saw me gushing about the movie, it also to me struck me as a very simple movie. It had some ridiculousness to it. They don't even name the country that we don't even know. And then they replay the ending of the Star Wars Death Star trench run, all that kind of stuff. And so while I loved the movie and I raved about it, I was sitting down with Cliff Stevenson having dinner one night, and I mentioned, but it's not a Best Picture contender. It's definitely not a Best. I mean, it's a fun movie. I loved it, had a great time with it, but had all this silly stuff in it and a lot of stuff. It doesn't have depth to it. It's not a Best Picture contender. That's how I thought at the time. And then Cliff went into this very passionate, very well thought out defense of the notion of Top Gun Maverick being a legit Best Picture contender. And I walked away. It was so compelling. I walked away having completely changed my mind. And so I asked Cliff if he would come in and share. So Cliff, this was a couple of months ago that we were having dinner and we talked, the whole Top Gun thing came up, and I said to you, Top Gun's great. I love it, but it's not a best picture contender, but you feel it is. Why do you feel it's a best picture contending kind of film?
Can I just, you got to tell the audience how many times you saw this movie
I've seen it. I've seen it 12 times in the theater. That's just in the theater though. This is, to me, a nearly perfect movie. And I know it's simplistic, and I know that you can point to, well, this is a fault and this is a flaw, whatever. But to me, it is a nearly perfect theatrical film. Here's why I think it absolutely should be in the running for Best Picture. In a time where we just went through, where theaters were closed and we heard for 2 years how theaters were going to die off and nobody wanted to go back to the movies, and there was no future for theatrical exhibition. It was done. Tom Cruise, the Christ-like figure of Hollywood, comes along and think about the scene in Maverick where he's talking to Ed Harris, the
Drone Ranger,
the Drone Ranger, and Ed Harris is, the Admiral's telling him, your time is done. You're a dinosaur. We won't even need your kind anymore, and it's done. And Maverick, Tom Cruise, goes to the door and turns around and says, "Maybe, sir, but not today." Now, that whole conversation is essentially Tom Cruise saying, yeah, you think streaming's the future? You think technology is going to save us? Maybe, but not today. This is why. So the reason why I think Top Gun...
You're saying he was talking about the theatrical experience.
But he was talking about you think streaming's the future, you think technology is, maybe, but not today. Today is still about theatrical. And Top Gun Maverick as a movie, first of all, it's flawlessly produced, just from a technical standpoint. It looks gorgeous. The visual effects are seamless. It sounds amazing. Just the actual technical craft of that movie is perfect. It's pitch perfect. But what that movie did, if the Oscars are about celebrating the theatrical experience and celebrating the sort of love of movies and movie going, there is no other movie that came out this year. Well, maybe one. There's no other movie on this scale that brought people back into the theater multiple times. My mother-in-law is in her mid-70s. She barely goes to the movies. She saw this twice. People that don't go to the movies went out to see this. People that go to the movies saw it multiple times. As we talked about earlier, they were able to extend the window on this because in a complete mirror to the first Top Gun, this movie was #1 when it came out, and it was #1 on Labor Day weekend. That has not happened, to my knowledge, since the first Top Gun in '86. So as a pure love letter to the theatrical experience and to movie making and to everything that people love about movie theaters, Top Gun is the shining star on top of the tree that nobody else was willing to do. Everybody else was, and you think about Tom Cruise, never done a streaming show, never done a TV show, hasn't done a comic book movie. He is a pure, straight out theatrical, I just make movies kind of guy.
Right.
And so what this movie accomplished is something that no other movie has accomplished. It is on its own. And so if you're looking at what the best picture is, it's got to be in the running just because of how it made us come back to the theater, how it made us interact with the theatrical experience, wanting to see it on a big screen, wanting to see it in IMAX, or wanting to see it in Dolby, or all those things. And even when it came out on digital, I owned it. I was still going back to the theater to see it. And you would see it like it would leave like the Prime or it would leave the Dolby, and then a week or two later they'd go, well, there's nothing really in here that's like
Let's
blowing
put it
anybody's
back in,
skirt up.
yeah.
Let's throw Top Gun back in here, and I'd go back and it would be full. And I was like, this should be like church. Like they should just show this every Sunday morning in a theater, and we can all just go and enjoy it once a week, and that'll be it. So, if you're going to celebrate, it's neither of you have seen The Fabelmans, correct?
Not yet. No, I'm seeing it this week.
I've seen The Fabelmans. I didn't love it, and in the adage of like show don't tell, Top Gun is like a movie that shows you why movies are great. The Fabelmans was a movie that told you why movies were great. And so, for all the talk about these two movies kind of being in the front running for Best Picture in terms of nominations, along with Everything Everywhere, which I think is the other movie that really got everybody excited about going to the theater and was a word of mouth thing. And, but
Totally different scale, though. Totally
different scale. But it was one of those things where you walked into Everything Everywhere and you were like, God, I've never seen anything like this. And Top Gun was kind of the same thing on a massive scale where you were like, I've never seen anything like this.
The part where you really won me over was you mentioned something to me, because I remember we were having dinner and you said, like, what do you always say that movies are? And I said, well, movies are experiential events. And he said, has any movie delivered that kind of an experience?
Right.
Because that's what I go on about all the time, right? Movies are experiential events. What kind of experience
Right.
do you walk out with? And that's when I went, the light bulb went out for me.
How did you feel walking out of that theater?
Yeah, and
everybody
while
walked
sitting in
out
there.
on air.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience, and I experienced that again, and that's when you won me over. Rob, you and I haven't really talked about this. When you hear the notion of a Top Gun Maverick being a legit Best Picture contender, how does that hit you? Positively, negatively? I don't know. What do you think?
Look, obviously, my esteemed colleague Cliff, good friend of mine, known him for years. When I first knew him, he hadn't won any Saturns. Now he's won 4.
I almost brought one today.
And
You should have brought your Saturn
on the
awards.
desk.
4 Saturn
more
awards.
than me.
I remember the first. By the way, I remember the first time being at Cliff's house, and I'm hanging out at Cliff's house, and I'm like, time out. He's showing me some hot toys away. I'm like, time out. Are those Saturn awards? It's like, oh yeah, I got what 4? I got 4.
I only had 3 at that
Okay.
time. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's
I
right.
have 4
You had
now.
3 at the time. Now you've got 4. That's right. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
No, and look, I've always believed that clearly Top Gun Maverick is the pinnacle of what the magic and entertainment of movies is. No argument for me. All of your points are very valid. But in terms of Best Picture, I'm a snob. And I really believe that it is the job of a Best Picture to delve into the great human truths that they transcend time, space, mock numbers on an indicator, and they should be timeless in a way. And the thing about Top Gun is it inherently is tied to the original Top Gun, but this is not Godfather 2. It is very thin in terms of its story. Even the end, the great climax, is lifted from Star Wars. There's only 1 meter difference between the Death Star exhaust port and the
what else
target
was
bed.
nominated for Best Picture?
Okay,
Star Wars.
but it
Which is also a
point.
very
That's a good point.
simple.
But the thing
story.
about Star Wars, it was game changing in that no one had ever seen anything like it before. There was nothing analogous to Star Wars that had ever appeared on a cinema screen. And I would say that this movie, while I loved it, I mean, I've watched the Blu-ray like 6 times, 4K 6 times. It's great. I saw it in the theaters 3 times. I love this movie. But is this movie, when I'm 85 years old, if I live to be that long, on my deathbed and I'm going through my collection, I'm not going to pick this over Lawrence of Arabia.
I think some people might, though.
Some people might.
Yeah.
And I would ask you this question. In watching Top Gun Maverick, did you laugh?
I did.
Were you thrilled?
No, I was thrilled.
Did you cry?
I did.
Did
cry.
you walk out smiling?
I did.
Is that not the ultimate goal
Of a movie.
Okay.
To elicit that response from you?
Here's the
to where
thing.
You
Hold on,
walk
I
out
got to throw one more
satisfied.
thing. I got to throw one more thing here, and then we need to move on because we're way over time here. But I want to point this out too. I see there's an interesting debate going on in the live chat. I see about talking. Did Top Gun save the movies like in the COVID era? Some people saying it was Spider-Man No Way Home that did. I would propose this. Spider-Man No Way Home obviously was a much bigger hit than Top Gun Maverick, but it got a certain audience out. Before Top Gun Maverick, like the 40 plus crowd had not started coming back to the movie theaters. And there was a couple of movies that did do that. But I mean, it was Top Gun Maverick that got, because the movie theater industry is not only going to survive on the geeks and the nerds like us.
Right.
It's got to survive on the general wider audience. And it was, in many ways, that was kind of the movie that brought everybody back to the theaters that were outside.
It played big in every state.
In every state.
It was not.
My final word on this is I believe a best picture should illuminate, and you should walk out of a best picture having a revelation or have learned something that you didn't know before.
See, I agree with that because that's an experience.
Yeah.
But there are different kinds of experience.
I did not know this was going to make $1.5 billion.
I understand, but I didn't learn anything.
That's what I learned.
I didn't feel an emotional catharsis. This was an amusement park ride. It was a great amusement park ride. It's like the best roller coaster you could go on. But the best roller coaster that I can go on is just that.
But why does it have to be one or the other? Why does why does a best picture have to be something that only treats story one way and does not? I mean, Raiders of the Lost Ark was another best picture, and that is just an homage to much lesser films.
Right, but it didn't win.
All right, I need to cut this thing off. I need to cut off because we could go on this for another hour, but we do need to move on from here. Guys, obviously the question is for you. I think one of the big interesting points heading into the Oscar nominations this year is going to be, does Top Gun Maverick get one of those Best Picture nominations? Arguments have been made here. What do you buy into? Do you think it should be considered as the Best Picture of the year? Do you think it shouldn't, for whatever reasons? Whatever your thoughts are, jump down to the comment section below and leave those thoughts there. All right, guys, with that down, we're going to take another second here. If you want to, make a line on whether or not Top Gun gets nominated for things, maybe you should go to our friends, another sponsor of our show today, the good folks over at DraftKings. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, DraftKings. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, should be your go-to when betting on the NFL this holiday season. With things like same-game parlays, easy and fast payouts, player props, and more. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. And check this out. Right now, everyone can earn up to a 100% boost with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Just go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, place a same-game parlay, and combine multiple bets like which team will win, player props, total points, and more. The more legs you add, the bigger the boost, the bigger your shot to win big. Personally, I like the Rams to pull off a big upset win over the Chiefs next weekend. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code Campea. Place a $5 bet on any NFL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with the code Campea. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. And thank you to our friends at DraftKings for sponsoring this episode of the John Campea Show. All right, with that down, let's get into main topic number 2. Kaylee, what is our second main topic today?
Second main topic comes to us from Ulysses Everett McGill. Hey, John and crew, I just saw Marvel's Blade has finally secured director after the seemingly abrupt departure of Bassam Tariq. It was abrupt to fans. I'm sure it was brewing at Marvel for a hot minute. The new director is Jan Dimaj, who directed the first episode of Lovecraft Country, as well as 2 feature films. One of them got mixed reviews, one of them got outstanding reviews. I'll refer to one of them to the Russo brothers and their cinematic masterpiece, You, Me, and Dupree, to assuage any concerns. Marvel also hired Michael Starbury, the Emmy-nominated writer of arguably the best episode of When They See Us, to pen the script. It's good to know this thing isn't dead in the water. Thoughts? John, what do you think about this director choice?
It's interesting. First of all, it's fantastic to hear that the Blade project isn't dead. Because before yesterday, I wasn't 100% sure that this Blade movie was even still going to happen. So that's good news that it's moving ahead, it's moving forward. Now, as far as the director goes, yeah, not a wealth of experience, but again, directed the pilot, and this is important, directed the pilot episode of Lovecraft Country. That is key in television and in series because the first one, you often bring in your biggest guns to direct the pilot in the first couple of episodes because that sets the tone for the entire series that all the other directors that come after you need to follow and kind of fall in line with. And so, again, and what he did with the premiere episode of Lovecraft Country, almost fell off the show after the second episode, but I loved the first episode and it was incredible. Now, he's also done two notable things. One is White Boy Rick. I think that's an underrated movie. Yeah, Matthew McConaughey, Brian Tyree Hill. I didn't think it was one of the top 10 movies of the year that it came out or anything like that, but I thought it was a really solid movie. I thought Matthew McConaughey was great, and I thought that was a well-directed movie. The other one that he got like 2 BAFTA nominations for was for his film 71. And again, 2 BAFTA nominations. I think he's got like 7 or 8 in total overall. So when you actually sit back and look at that, that's not bad. And of course, and so he's that. You got an Emmy-nominated writer coming in to do a script. What is really interesting, though, is that they're calling it a page 1 rewrite. This comes to us from the folks over at the Hollywood Reporter, who said the following. Jan Dimaj, who directed the pilot for HBO's boundary-pushing horror series Lovecraft Country, has come aboard to helm the vampire action thriller that still has Mahershala Ali attached to star. Meanwhile, Michael Starbury, who earned an Emmy nomination for penning an episode of Ava DuVernay's drama When They See Us, has been hired to pen a brand new script for the feature. Rather than jamming another director in something that clearly needed an overhaul, Marvel pressed pause for a deeper look under the hood. That meant a page 1 rewrite for the project, which had labored in the screenwriting phase. Mahershala Ali is said to have personally been involved in selecting the writer. So this isn't all right, let's pick things back up again. This is they threw everything out the window. That's how bad of a state this project was in. They literally just threw everything out the window and said, we're starting from scratch. So Mahershala Ali, I believe, is going to turn 67 years old when this movie comes out. At this point, it's taking a while. So look, overall, am I super familiar with the work that he brings, that Jan brings? Well, no, other than, White Boy Rick, the Lovecraft Country, not a huge sample size, but I like what I've seen. And if he's come in there and given a pitch for a certain idea and vision and approach he wants to take to it and has won them over, great. Like you brought up in your email, this is the same studio that hired the directors of You, Me, and Dupree. And that turned out to be a pretty good decision nonetheless. So I like what I'm seeing. I'm just more excited that the Blade project is still ongoing. Anyway, Rob, you hear about this. What are your thoughts about the new director and writer?
Well, it's curious to me that I don't know if Marvel's ever done this before, like completely gone back to the drawing board and started from scratch. I like the fact they've done it. I like the fact that why move forward unless you're 100%. Obviously, they've found, just like with James Gunn, he makes a Slither, he makes a Super, and Kevin Feige, You, Me, and Dupree can say these people know how to tell stories. And he's looked at their television work. The Russo brothers had television work as well.
Yep.
And I thought Lovecraft Country, especially like that first episode, that's a great show. So it all makes sense. And the fact that Mahershala Ali probably put in a good word for the screenwriter, everybody's kind of on the same page, because I don't think anybody wants to see this movie succeed more than Mahershala Ali does. Because who doesn't want to play?
Well, he's got, 3 years invested in this already?
Yeah, but he's got Oscars. It's like, I want to play a vampire slayer, man. I want to play the Daywalker. I can see that he's probably going, it was really cool playing Cottonmouth or whatever on
Luke Cage.
Luke Cage. I mean, who wouldn't? This is a childhood fantasy made flesh. You're wearing awesome leather armor, and you got a cape on that's made. I mean, I can only imagine that who would want to do that. So clearly, and I want to see this movie. I'm just happy this movie's getting made. I think it's going to kick ass. I think Mahershala Ali's going to crush it, and I want a hot toy of him already. It's going to be great.
Cliff, what do you think about the additions?
Well, I think there's kind of a bigger, more obvious story that's happening here, which is I have a friend that works with Marvel, and we talked recently about kind of phase 4. And I think everybody sort of generally agrees that phase 4 hasn't been all that strong.
Wasn't their strongest phase.
Wasn't their strongest.
No.
But the reason for that is because, Kevin Feige and Kevin Feige knew this, was stretched incredibly thin. I mean, when you think about like 2019, where they had Endgame and Captain Marvel, and he had Spider-Man he was involved with, there's an infinite, or finite amount of content they were producing. Then you move into like the Disney Plus era, where they're producing shows and movies, and all these things are happening.
And now these one-shot specials too.
Really overextended. And to me, what happened with Blade is this is the moment you see Kevin Feige coming back to say, all right, hang on, let's clear everything out, and going back to the way he did things before, which was to be more personally involved, more hands-on with the filmmakers that he was working with, and that when the previous director leaves over creative differences and they're just like, we're going to start over from scratch. That to me was Kevin Feige. It was very obvious Kevin Feige saying, this is not the direction that the MCU is taking. We are going to start over with a whole new director that I am now going to be very personally involved with so that I can maintain the quality, because everybody, because Phase 4 was sort of a disappointment overall. And so, I'm excited about this just from what it says about Kevin Feige's involvement and the fact that they're starting from scratch. So, they're going into it not compromised, not like, well, we had a script, but it was kind of okay. We'll fix it, or we'll tweak it, or barreling down towards this arbitrary production start that they don't really need to do, and just saying, yeah, we'll push production for 6 months or a year while we fix this and start over and do a page one rewrite. And when you've seen him do that, it's because he wants to maintain that quality control over the universe that I think he let sort of slip away with all the Hawkeyes and Lokis and everything that he was producing all simultaneously. So I think this is a good sign, just in terms of knowing that there's now a steady hand back on the universe as a whole. And Blade is sort of the first indication that that's happening for real.
All right, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this Blade? I know there were some doubts going on about whether this would still happen or whether Mahershala Ali would even stay on it, but it looks like he's still staying on. They're going back to square one. They're writing a brand new script. How do you feel about this? What do you think about the writer and the director they've got attached? Whatever you guys are thinking, jump down to the comment section below and leave your thoughts there. All right, guys, with that down, let's move on to main topic number 3. Kaylee, what is our third main topic today?
John, our third main topic comes to us from Tyler. Hey, John and everyone else. My most anticipated movie each year, it was supposed to release Avatar 2, and I hope they make 4 and 5. It is being reported that Avatar 2 needs to make $2 billion to just break even. I'm 99.9% certain it will reach $1 billion, but I feel it's unlikely to reach $2 billion. Only 5 movies have. If it doesn't break even, how do you think it will affect the remainder of the franchise? Thanks, and bring on the filthy. Okay, so I looked up and I found out that the only 5 movies to break $2 billion: Titanic, Avatar, Star Wars, The Force Awakens, Avengers, Infinity Wars, and Avengers Endgame. Do you think Avatar 2 will join them?
Okay. Number 1, no, I do not think that Avatar will make $2 billion. I've said this forever. I've said it forever. This movie will make a ton of money. It will not make the first Avatar. The time passed. I mean, they could have done this 7 years ago and maybe, but it's still going to be a huge success. It's going to be a massive success. I don't think it'll hit $2 billion. I hope I'm wrong. I love seeing movies come out and be super successful. So maybe, who knows? All right. John, some people would say to me, what the hell? A movie that requires $2 billion to break even? Where's this coming from? Well, here's where this is coming from, because this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. So this comes from the folks over at Variety who wrote the following. Okay, so how expensive? This is in Variety, remember. How expensive is Avatar 2? Well, early reports have claimed that the production budget alone was in the $250 million range, but the director, James Cameron, isn't willing to give a hard number just yet. The only answer Cameron would give about the sequel's budget when asked by GQ magazine was the following: it's very fucking expensive. Cameron apparently told Disney and 20th Century Fox Studios executives that his sequel budget was so high, it represented the worst business case in movie history. According to the director's estimates, you have to be the 3rd or 4th highest grossing film in history. That is your threshold. That is your break even. Let me read that last part again. According to the director's estimate, James Cameron's estimate, you have to be the 3rd or 4th highest grossing film in history. That is your threshold. Okay. So from that, let's go over to my screen here, Jonathan. Okay, third or fourth. Well, the third highest grossing film in history is Titanic at $2.2 billion. The fourth highest grossing film in history, Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens at $2 billion. So you're talking about $2.1 billion. That's why you're seeing all these headlines running around right now that James Cameron is saying this movie needs to make $2 billion to break even though James Cameron never said $2 billion. He said the third or fourth highest grossing films in history. All right. I am calling bullshit. There is no way at all in the world that this movie is going to require $2 billion to break even. There's just not. Why? Well, let's go into the chicken scratch Campea classroom here for a second, shall we? As we break this down and look at what would this fundamentally mean for this movie, the types of numbers that they're throwing around. What does this actually mean? All right, were you able to get that, Jonathan?
Yeah, you might have to reconnect it.
Yeah, give me 1 second here. So, okay, here we go. There we go. Okay, so here's what this would fundamentally have to mean for this movie as I bring up my thing here. There we go. All right. Let's look at what the numbers break down as and how it would kind of all work out. All right. So when you're looking at how much money a movie needs to make, okay, this is just some general stuff here, okay? And forgive my chicken scratch. I'm not really good at writing in the first place, but especially on a tablet here. So you got to, in talking about what is the profitability mark, what is that break even mark? You got to look at a couple things. First of all, you got to look at total cost, okay? Total cost. Total cost equals your production budget, right? Plus marketing. Now, this is something they taught me when I was at AMC, right? They taught me this this is what AMC Theaters told me when I was working there, that this is not an exact science, but if you want a general rule of thumb about how much money, generally speaking, there are always exceptions, that a movie needs to make in order to be break even or be profitable, this is the thing. You got to take your total cost, then you look at your total income, all right? How much money to make? Well, your total income equals box office minus 33%. There are a bunch of people out there that tell you it's 50%, that the theaters keep 50%, 60%. I don't know where people get that from, but the head executives at AMC Theaters always told me at the end of the day, when it all shakes out, it roughly equals about 1/3, okay? So you take your total cost, your total income. So if your total income is, say, $21, right? And you minus 33%, then roughly you're going to end up with $14, okay? So if you put out a movie and it made $21, you're actually going to get 14 of that back. All right? Fine. James Cameron here is saying that this movie is going to take $2.1 billion to break even. Well, then what does that essentially mean? He's essentially saying, so we need to make enough money that if you minus 33% from that, we needed to make enough money that we will be left with $1.4 billion. That we need to be left with $1.4 billion. It's like, okay, really? Let's say they go on the most expensive marketing campaign in the history of film. Let's say $300 million. That would be the most expensive marketing campaign ever. So if their marketing, I'll just say with an M, equaled 300 million, most expensive ever, that means that your production budget, P for production, was $1.1 billion. Are you fucking kidding me? No movie got made with a production budget of $1.1 billion. For $2.1 billion to be the break-even point here, again, this is a rough generality, okay? You're talking about a movie that had to have a production budget if They had a $300 million marketing budget. You're talking about a movie that would need a $1.1 billion budget. That is preposterous. And there is no way that is true. We were just talking the other day about Fast 10's budget is $340 million. And that's that's a top 4 most expensive film ever made.
No studio would ever greenlight that.
No studio would come close to greenlight.
No.
You're talking about a movie that would be close to the 3x of the next most expensive movie ever made, like almost 3 times. So why is James Cameron saying it'd have to come in the top 3 or 4 most profitable movies or biggest box office movies of all time? Here's why. Because he didn't mean worldwide. He didn't mean worldwide. He was not saying that the movie needed to make, somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.1 billion. Because if we can go back to my other screen there, Jonathan, the other one I have there. If we look at, say, domestic numbers, okay? Not worldwide numbers. So 3 and 4 would be Avatar domestically and Spider-Man No Way Home. Avatar domestically made $785 million. Spider-Man No Way Home made $814 million. So you're talking about $800 million. All right. Now, if you look at those numbers, you would have to be a ridiculously expensive movie to need to make $800 million to break even. I've never heard of that before. But this becomes more believable. Because now you're talking about a movie that has somewhere between a $300 and $400 million budget, which again would be one of the most, if not the most, perhaps expensive film ever made. So if now he's coming out and saying, when he means a 4th or 3rd biggest grossing film of all time, it's still astronomical. It's still insane numbers. But I think he's talking about needing to make 800, 850, that sort of thing to break even, not $2.1 billion. Again, I go back to his actual comment and quote in the article there. He didn't say it would cost $2 billion. He said it has to be the 3rd or 4th most, biggest film of all time. I think he was talking about the domestic numbers. That makes a lot more sense because there's no way in heaven or hell that any studio anywhere, it doesn't matter how much money the first Avatar made, no studio greenlit a $1 billion production budget movie.
Right.
Not a chance. So again, I think he was referring to domestic. Anyway, Cliff, you see the breakdown and the numbers. What do you think James Cameron was talking about and what makes more sense to you?
Well, the other thing that makes sense is when you meet these directors, they don't always know the numbers. Like they know their sliver of things. So, he's talking movie numbers, but he may not actually know what certain numbers are. So he's just sort of saying, well, I know Avatar made this amount of money, and so Endgame made this. So, a lot of times directors will throw out numbers kind of at random, but not really know the specific number. And so I'm a little shocked that something got on the internet and was misleading in any way.
That never happens.
Because that's usually doesn't happen. But the other thing about the your numbers are great, but then there's a whole nother layer to this, which is underneath this theatrical umbrella, you have all of this other income that this movie, the Avatar's got a themed land in Florida, and there's going to be marketing, there's going to be there's going to be all these other things all feed into, even if it didn't make its money back theatrically, there's all this ancillary income that Avatar makes. And so I think it's a combination of he's probably talking domestic. He's probably talking about numbers he doesn't totally know off the top of his head. I mean, he's probably just doing sort of an off-the-cuff interview. And then, don't worry too much about Disney. They're going to do fine. They're going to make money, and they've got all this other stuff that they're going to sell you with blue people and whatever else. So, but I think the domestic is probably the most logical explanation, because worldwide but no studio would ever go like even $500 million would be really hard.
And that would make it the most expensive film ever made.
Now
we're talking about having to double that.
Right. Now I'm confused about why your viewer, your writer hopes that they make 4 and 5, but it's clearly not interested in 3.
Yeah, just skip over 3, go right to 5.
He's like, I hope they make 4 and 5.
Anyway, Rob, you're seeing this. I don't know. Do you think James Cameron was literally saying that this movie needs to make $2 billion to break even?
I think what he was, because this was never been one movie. You know, when they greenlit this, it was a series of films, and they've been in development and they've been doing things. First of all, Cameron does all the R&D for the industry when it comes to effects. He's always pushing the boundaries.
He's kind of picked up the mantle from George Lucas for that.
Yeah, but they even made things like they made their own diving equipment. His brother made his own diving equipment when they made The Abyss, so you could see the actors' faces. So they created brand new underwater motion capture technology that didn't exist before. They've had a writer's room working on this for years. I mean, this film, the development costs, I don't even want to know what it costs, what they've been spending before they went into actual production. And when they went into production, from what I understand, they shot the live action for Avatar 2 and 3 all at the same time. Like, they continued it. So he's probably thinking, when he says Avatar, I think he's thinking of the entirety of what they've been doing. Like he said, he doesn't know if he's going to make 3 and 4. It depends on how, or 4 and 5 or whatever.
Yeah, it depends how 2 and 3 do.
2 and so 2 and 3 have, I think in his mind, are all one big project, because I don't think he makes that delineation. And when he's thinking about numbers, he's thinking total numbers. So,
but why would he say we need to be the third or fourth biggest film in history? You think he means that? It didn't sound like he was talking about 2 movies put together.
I know, but like you said, like Cliff said, I agree that when he's thinking about this, I don't even think he thinks of these as separate movies at this point. It's one big thing, kind of like how, you know, when they were shooting Matrix Reloaded and Matrix Revolutions. I mean, all that, once you're doing something like that, it's all kind of one big,
so he doesn't know in his head anymore that there's
no, I think he does, but I just don't think that I think he's thinking about the total expenditure.
Well, yeah, it would be hard to break that down as to, well, what's 3 and what's 2 and what did I spend on this and what's this budget.
And he's been working on this. I mean, they've been working on this movie pre-Disney merger. I mean, they were spending money on this film. I don't even know. I mean, he's been working on this, 8 years, in addition to all the other things he's been doing. So I can't even imagine how much money they've spent on this film.
Wasn't this supposed to come out opposite the last Star Wars movie at one point?
Yeah,
they were going to be on the same date, and they had to, and then it was like, oh, Avatar moved,
I think its initial release date was like 2017 or 2018 was the initial one that they said. Again,
and that was way pre-Fox merger.
I still think the most likely scenario here is that James Cameron knows exactly what he was saying. He was saying, but in saying that you need the 4th or 3rd biggest hit of all time, I think he was thinking in terms of U.S. domestic box office. I think, because again, then you're talking $800 million to break even. That makes a lot more sense, and that would still make it one of the most expensive films of all time.
If it was worldwide, that would be almost triple the highest budget ever.
Yeah,
which would have been, adjusted for inflation, is like $400 million for 1963's Cleopatra, which almost bankrupt Fox. So 3 times that.
And it could be a little of both, where because he has spent a bunch of money on 2 and 3, that he's looking at it as 2 better make a lot of money, because if 2 doesn't make a lot of money, I'm in trouble on 3.
Yeah, and then 4 and 5 don't get made.
And then 4 and 5 don't get made at all.
So I don't know, guys. I just think what is clear here is that James Cameron did not say it was going to cost $2 billion to be. That is the reports going around. That is the headlines going around. But he did not say that. He said 3rd or 4th biggest. And I think when you break down the numbers and actually look at the math, he's probably most likely either talking about a couple of films combined, or he's just talking about the domestic box office, which would line up. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this when you hear his comments and statements? How do you take it? Do you actually think that Avatar 2 needs to make $2.1 billion at the box office to break even? I don't know. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and leave your thoughts there. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 4 here, shall we? Kaylee, what is our 4th main topic today?
4th main topic comes to us from Anton Sugar. Hey, Campea crew. Looks like you were right. Kareem Daniel, right-hand man to Bob Chapek, is going to be following him out the door. I think the shakeup is great, and it hopefully signals a return to the old model that propelled Disney to the top of the world. Now, maybe they can court Peter Rice to come back in. Anyhow, what do you think of this news? Was it only a matter of time? And how good is this for Disney? Thanks, and bring on the filthy.
All right,
John,
thanks.
what do you think?
I think look, we talked about this briefly on our open mic yesterday, but it needs to be brought up here. So I when the news of Bob Iger coming back as CEO and that Bob Chapek was out, I had said, we're going to find out real fast that Kareem Daniel is going to be out too. Now, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, so Kareem Daniel has been a very faithful and loyal Bob Chapek lieutenant for many years at Disney. And so when Bob Chapek came in, and this is where I soured on Bob Chapek, because I was all for his hiring at first, but then one of his first moves was the one that made me go, what? And that was this. One of Bob Chapek's first moves was he created a new division called, what was it? Is the Disney Media and Entertainment Division? I think it's DMED, Disney Media and Entertainment Division. It was a brand new layer of bureaucracy, a new layer of middle management, if you will. But the problem was that this new department, this new org, had the most power at Disney than anybody. And this new DMED, the Disney Media and Entertainment Division, they had kind of full power to dictate what projects did and did not get made. They had the authority of the P&L lines, which always used to stay with the studio heads. They even had final authority to decide where projects would go. Whereas that authority used to rest with the studio heads, with the individual studio heads under Disney. That if a movie got made, the studio head would decide.
I have an image of it.
But yeah, there it is. That's the DMED right there, bringing terror to the universe of Disney. So they would ultimately have the decision-making power that if Kevin Feige came out and said, great, I just made this Marvel movie. The DMED had the authority to say, great, we're going to put that on Disney+. Which is why what happened at Pixar with their films. Because no longer did Pixar have the ability, or the heads of Pixar, to determine and decide where their project was going to go. It was now the DMED under Bob Chapek and his lieutenant, Kareem Daniel. And they decided, your Pixar movies are going to Disney+, to which Pixar was like, what? You're putting Soul straight to home streaming? What? You're putting Turning Red? We think this is a real special movie. Yeah, it's going to be great. We're going to dump it on streaming. It's going to be fantastic. So that's what this whole thing was. Now, one of the bigger problems, besides the fact that it was an idiotic move to create this division at all in the first place, was the fact that instead of going out and getting a media executive person with tons of experience dealing with media, entertainment, movies, television, stuff like that, instead, Bob Chapek rewarded his faithful lieutenant, who is a banker by history, and made Kareem Daniel, who, by the way, I have not a bad thing to say about Kareem Daniel. I've heard some people say he's actually one of the favorite people around there. People love Kareem Daniel. Apparently, he's a super nice guy. Everybody likes him. He's a nice, kind, wonderful person. But you're telling me that with these people, these decades, centuries of combined entertainment, movie, and television experience who are heading up all these different studios, you're going to take a banker and you're going to give this person the decision-making authority over projects, P&L, location, distribution, all that kind of stuff, and basically made when it comes to the entertainment division, other than Bob Chapek, Kareem Daniel was the most powerful guy at Disney. And he was not the guy with the experience or the resume to be there. So it was not a surprise when it got announced the day after Bob Iger returned that Kareem Daniel had been outed, and he is now gone. They have begun already to dismantle the DMED, although Bob Chapek said in a memo that there are going to be some elements of the DMED that will stay in place, but that Bob Iger already put out a memo saying, hey, I've got these 4 creative executives, and we are redoing the organizational structure. We are taking this filth garbage that Bob Chapek put in place, and we are throwing it out unceremoniously, and we are completely getting back. And he said, and I'm going to read this from the article, he said, we are getting back, we are reshaping Disney's streaming strategy and overall content strategy and returning to a structure that prioritizes greater decision-making by creatives. And he echoed that again in another outlet, saying that we are going to reorganize this entire thing to make sure that the decision-making power is in the hands of the people creating the stuff. And that is one of the most key things. Now, Kareem Daniel will land on his feet because from all reports, he's a very smart executive, just maybe not an executive in the right area at the time. So yeah, listen, there's the axe of Zaslav, there's the hammer of Iger, and it's falling fast and it's falling hard. Anyway, Rob, you heard about this. Kareem Daniel's out. No surprise, but I was surprised to see how quickly it happened. What was your take on it?
Well, again, I mean, he's got Bob Iger now has been given a hell of a lot of money to come in. He's not going to wait. He's going to come in and make sweeping changes
because he's only got 2 years.
He's got 2 years.
He's got 2 years to change everything.
And this was something that was added by Chapek that he doesn't even agree with. I mean, in terms of like we've talked about on the show, you can't take it. It's not like Marvel was broken and Bob Chapek had to come in and add a level of like confine or constrict what Kevin Feige was going to do because it wasn't broken. And so you've got to give like, look, I don't think that creatives should be given the keys to any kingdom because we will put our creativity in front of, say, the money being spent. Like, hey, just give me more money. I need more money. We're not always the best people with money. I can say that right now. So it's important to have people that watch your P's and Q's.
Checks and balances. Absolutely.
I'm a firm believer in that. And I think creative people in the film business work best when they are working against economic constraints. That's when real creativity can happen. But this, you're putting in a bunch of executives that don't have any experience making movies, that are making decisions for people that are making movies that aren't necessarily going to be the best decisions to make. And that always happens in the film business. And that's what you've seen time and time again. And I think that it makes absolute sense that Chapek got rid of this division that was created because Bob Chapek is a guy who is a corporate animal, whereas Bob Iger is a guy that's like, no, I believe that our creatives need to have, and Bob Iger knows. He doesn't need this division. He can make these decisions himself. That's why he's Bob Iger.
Cliff, you hear about this. Again, I don't think Kareem departing is a surprise to anybody once Bob Chapek wasn't there anymore, but I was a little bit surprised by the timing of it, how quickly it happened. How do you see this?
It reminded me of like the end of Beverly Hills Cop 2 where they fire Lutz and Biddle. It's like Biddle's the assistant and he's like, Robert Ridgely's like, you're fired. And you're fired too. And he's like, what did I do? That's what this felt like. But there's an interesting thing that I looked up because I was like, I wasn't sure. In 2019, when Iger was still fully in control, Disney or Disney adjacent sort of things, including like with Spider-Man, released, I think, 11 movies and like the top 8 movies that year domestically were all Disney or Spider-Man. In 2022, you know how many movies Disney has released theatrically as of today?
No.
4. Thor, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, and Lightyear. They'll have Strange Worlds tomorrow, and they'll have Avatar next month. But it's like they've released nothing this year. Turning Red went to Disney Plus. This thing, so those creative decisions that were made by people who had ulterior motives in terms of what you're going to do with your streaming service or how you're going to, it didn't work out. You made no money. And it's interesting that this converges sort of with Zaslav and Warner, with him coming out and saying, you can't spend money on these things and not monetize them. You cannot make movies for HBO Max that aren't being monetized in some way. And I think you saw that with Disney Plus this year. I mean, they had Disenchanted. You could have thrown that in theaters. You could have thrown the Hocus Pocus too. You could have thrown that in theaters and made some money. You had movies that you could have released and you chose not to. You chose to essentially give them away because with Disney Plus, it's about retention, but what it's really about is subscriber growth. And you go, okay, well, those movies, how much did those movies grow your subscription? Zero. Therefore, you made no money on those investments. So.
And you'll never make money.
You'll never make money on those things. So now, dissolving, this council and getting rid of all of these people that might have been great people, but they were there doing the wrong job. They were there doing a job that they shouldn't have been doing. And I think Iger coming in knows this is not how we built this brand. This is not how we became successful. This is not how I left the company. And just in terms of the raw numbers, I don't think Disney in 2019 they hit 4.4 billion in just domestic box office. I don't think they've hit $1 billion this year in domestic box office. They're close now with Black Panther, and they'll hit it after Avatar. But it's like that's a huge drop off, and it has everything to do, because Doctor Strange and Thor made more money than the last ones did. So it has nothing to do with the quality of what you're making. It has to do with the fact that you're not releasing anything. And you're basically using this stuff as a loss leader for your streaming service. And I think, with the earnings call and with everything else that's going on, like, this had to happen. And I'm not surprised that Bob Iger came in and was just like, all you people that were doing things this way,
you're gone.
We're not doing it this way anymore. So there's no reason for you to be here anymore.
All right, guys. Question is for you. What do you think about this? Now that Bob Chapek is gone, they've moved quickly to remove his top lieutenant who is representing the DMED as well, and that's now gone. How do you interpret this? Are you surprised that Iger is moving that fast? Whatever you think, jump down to the comment section below and leave your thoughts there. All right, guys. With that down, let's get into our fifth and final main topic here today, shall we? Kaylee, what is main topic number 5?
Main topic number 5 comes to us from Edwin M. Hey, John, I bet the celebrations at the John Campea show headquarters went long into the night at the announcement that Big Papa Iger was back. But did you see the story about how it all went down? Apparently, Chapek didn't know he was getting fired until the same day they announced it publicly. He was even supposed to be at the Elton John concert Sunday and introduce Elton when the bomb dropped and he was out. I thought this was sort of drama that only happened in the movies. What do y'all think of this? What do you think, John?
I mean, yeah, listen, first of all, it was crazy to hear. I still remember exactly where I was sitting at my computer at home, and I didn't even see anything. The phone call came in from our business advisor, came in and told me, I just answered, hello, Chapek's out. I'm like, what? And I was literally sitting at my computer going through my news feeds. I hadn't seen it yet. He said, Chapek's out. And I'm like, oh, what? So as crazy as that was, and that Bob Iger was returning and all that kind of stuff, reading the story about how it went down was even crazier. You're right. It's something like straight out of an episode of Succession. So apparently Bob Iger, the chairman of the board who replaced Bob Iger, when Bob Iger stepped down as chairman, apparently reached out and started talking to Iger just days before the announcement came out. Just days. And then apparently, depending on what source you're listening to, Bob Chapek had no idea, because Disney Plus was live streaming the Elton John concert, and a whole ton of executives from there were going to this Elton John concert to see the concert, and they were all there, and they were all having a good time. And apparently, according to the report, Bob Chapek was even supposed to come out and introduce Elton John at the event. And he found out prior to that, left the venue, according to the report that I'm reading. Again, I'm reading some conflicting reports, so it may not have happened exactly this way, but the main one that I'm reading is saying that he left. Kareem Daniel was also there and left. And then that's when the executives there who were there at the concert started getting their DMs and started getting their text messages and finding out that Bob Chapek was out. And it was all happening right there. And apparently the hashtag RIP DMED, which of course that Disney Media and Entertainment Division, that became the trending thing amongst the inner Disney executive text change, RIP DMED. And it was left there. And you're like, well, what the hell's going on? Now, and apparently the reaction to this was huge. This comes from Deadline, and they wrote the following. This quote comes from the New York Post, who said this: Chapek was blindsided by the move, as at the end of last week, he did not know what was about to happen, according to the source close to the situation. It was definitely a shock to Chapek, the source added. Other top Disney executives were unaware of the leadership change until they received Iger's email announcing his return on Sunday. Imagine that. Like, you think you're working for one guy, and then you get an email from somebody saying, I'm your boss now. I'm the captain now. Until they received Iger's email announcing his return on Sunday night. Some learned of the news while attending an Elton John concert at Dodger Stadium that was being live streamed on the Disney Plus streaming service. The Wall Street Journal reported Chapek had been expected to attend the concert, and according to Deadline, he was there. At any rate, he was expected to attend the concert, and the company had even planned for him to introduce Elton John on stage, sources told the Journal. Now, reactions around Disney were interesting. Now, this one comes to us from Deadline, and Deadline was writing the following on this. They said this, and I'm on the wrong page. There we go. we hear only the very top executives at Disney had a heads up about the changeover shortly before it became official. The rest were so taken aback that many suspected a hack when the release hit their inboxes on Sunday night. Then this is a great quote. The feeling quickly went from shock to elation. As one person said, added another, everyone was smiling. There was a sense of relief that everything would be okay, which we hadn't felt in a long time. So the news as it was going out, and by the way, there's other kind of comments on this a little bit later down as well, that the reactions from various executives, middle management, creatives was, think of the end of Return of the Jedi. As the fireworks go off in the night sky and the Ewoks sing Yub Nub and dancing around the fallen heads of the EDEM and just having a good time. Apparently the whole attitude around Disney was celebration. That everybody at the company wanted Chapek gone. Nobody apparently liked the direction the company had been going in and all that kind of stuff. So that's there. And then even people outside of the company started putting out their reactions. Adam Aron, my favorite executive in entertainment. Adam Aron, CEO of, and Taylor, maybe you can look up the exact quote, but Adam Aron, the CEO of AMC Theaters, took to social media that I don't know what he says, I'm popping bottles of champagne or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, he literally got up, but he basically got on and said, fuck you, Bob Chapek. We're so glad you're gone. That was basically what. Did you get the exact quote there, Taylor?
No.
Okay, once you got it, just raise your hand. Let me know. But you got it?
No.
But I want to give you guys the exact quote that he said. But Adam Aron was like celebrating. So we got movie theaters who, Chapek was basically robbing by throwing everything and losing Disney money by throwing things on direct streaming. So this guy, he's at an Elton John concert thinking this is a great day. Who gets to walk on stage and introduce Elton John?
Not Bob
Apparently
Chapek.
not Bob Chapek.
Not Bob Chapek, apparently. But he's there, like so says, like it was right out of an episode of Succession.
He did say this because I think Rob had texted us this deadline. It said, I don't know if this is what you're talking about. Based on box office grosses, Disney is the biggest filmmaker of any movie studio. Bob Iger coming back to again lead Disney as its CEO is a big deal. Let me shout this from the mountaintop.
That was it. Let me shout it from the mountaintops.
I have the absolute highest respect for Bob Iger, and that was from.
Yeah, so it's basically, it was the Munchkins singing "Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead." That's, and we're reading in Deadline the reactions of the rank and file amongst Disney too, and then he was gone. Now let me say this, everybody knows I have not been a fan of how Bob Chapek ran Disney. For all I know, totally lovely human being, all that kind of stuff. While I am very happy for the company that he is gone, I will say this. This sounds a little dirty. In Bob Chapek's defense, you try your best. Maybe you're making all the wrong decisions and maybe you were making some dumb mistakes. But I don't think anybody will ever debate that he wasn't trying and he was trying to do something great, right? And you worked for years at a company long before he became CEO. He's been at this company for a long, long time. And he's trying to do the best he can. To find out the day that it becomes public that you're out, even I gotta say, I think they might have done Bob a little dirty. Bob Chapek.
I think I know what my Halloween costume for next year is going to be.
I think that
Yeah.
actually, you know what?
Shave
If you
my head.
combine the two of you,
right.
you've got a great Bob. Just put the camera on these guys wide. You combine these two guys, you got a great Bob Chapek. Give me the wide shot of these two. Yeah, there you go. You do that little morphin thing. You got a great Bob Chapek there. Anyway. I honestly feel bad for Chapek the way it went down.
Oh, I don't.
It's gone. You don't at all? You don't seem to have a sympathy. One drop of sympathy.
I've never seen anything like. I've never seen somebody so. I've never seen people so happy to see somebody gone. And not just talking the executives. I'm talking the fans, and that speaks to a bigger issue with Bob Chapek, which was he was loathed by the Disney fans to the point where he couldn't go to D23 and introduce D23 because he knew he would get booed by the fans at D23. So as the head of the company, he couldn't even present himself because his decisions were so unpopular, not just with the people that work there, but with the people that bought their stuff as well. I mean, you had experiences with the park that you were not pleased about. Like, a lot of that stuff is residual Chapek stuff from new decisions he made. And I watched the show yesterday, and you were saying that he kind of was given this impossible task during COVID. And I would tend to disagree somewhat with that in only to say, great leadership isn't judged by when everything is great, but by when everything is not great.
Yeah, that's when you find out what you are
And
as a leader.
he was clearly not up to the challenge of when things are bad, how do you respond to it? And his response to this was bad across the board, and to the point where fans didn't like him, employees didn't like him, the executives didn't like him. He was getting rid of people he shouldn't have gotten rid of. That sort of seemed like protection for him, like get rid of everybody that was a threat, and that way there's nobody that can replace you. Not thinking like they'll bring Iger back. But the other thing is that he, like, the idea that he didn't see this coming, he fucking should have. Because he just had a terrible call, and they knew a year ago, because when they did their earnings call last year, they had great numbers because they were going up against a year where the parks were closed and theaters were closed. And so 2021's numbers were like, they're great because they were compared to a year when everything was closed. So they kind of said, let's wait and see what the 2022 numbers are like. So he knew those numbers were not going to be good. And instead of playing it and saying like, yeah, we're still repositioning, and we were in a position of trying to play catch up a little bit, and we're still in a little bit of a COVID lag with our productions and whatever. He was just like, everything's great, no big deal. And people were like, that's not really what's happening, and that's not what a leader does. And he should have known this was coming because everybody else seemed to know it was coming. We didn't know it was going to come when it did, and we didn't know that it was. I mean, when he re-upped his deal, didn't everybody sort of feel like, really, they renewed his deal again?
Well, but I had warned everybody that, look, he will get even I said well in advance, he will get the initial renewal of his contract. That'll happen because stocks will drop insanely if they don't. But does he make it through to the end of that 3-year term? That was going to be the second.
No, he didn't.
And it turns out he didn't. By the way, one other thing. I got told that Simu Liu, star of Shang-Chi, actually put out a social media post that was just a smiling face.
Like, that's what I'm saying.
What's that about? It's
Wow.
like, remember when Bob Chapek, when Shang-Chi was coming out, Bob Chapek said, oh, are you excited for the Shang-Chi? He's, yeah, Shang-Chi's an interesting experiment for us. And like, remember, and they got pissed off a lot of people. But one other thing, I got to point this one out too, is, who else was probably enjoying their Sunday night? Apparently one of the guys at that, what do you call it? At the Elton John concert was Rice, the big executive, the former head of General Entertainment that everybody loved, that a lot of people at Disney saw as Bob Chapek's successor, and Bob Chapek out of nowhere fired him and he was gone. Apparently he was there at the concert dancing and having a good time.
He jumped on and started singing with Elton. He was so happy.
And I think it's going to be a long, long time.
No, and that's why we call it the blues.
But I mean, have you ever seen anything like this where somebody is so universally loathed, like top to bottom?
In entertainment, like
Tuesday for me.
you asshole. I mean, all
About me, not you.
Oh, I mean, Weinstein.
Yeah, but that's after the fact.
Not
That's after you know
differently.
everything.
I mean,
Like,
no,
this is-
it's actually crazy, but the drama in which this unfolded, and again, all this again reaffirms to me that something else happened that we don't know about. How quickly they moved on this, how fast they moved on this. This tells me that there was another issue that came to the board, that they had to pull what is being defined as and described as an emergency board meeting, and then instantly out him, like immediately. It's something else happened that we're going to find out about in the next year or so, I think.
Well, I also think that this overall, when people look back at the time that Hollywood's been going through in the streaming era in particular, we're watching everybody put their eggs in the streaming basket, and everyone's thinking streaming is going to save us because with our subscribers, the studios had something in streaming they'd never had before, which is they knew how much money they're going to make a month. They get cash flow, and they know exactly what that's going to be. And the movie business has inherently been volatile. So streaming, they thought it was going to be this new thing. It hasn't turned out that way. Netflix, Warner Brothers, Disney, Paramount to a certain extent,
Peacock,
the stock prices have all taken a hit because they've had to spend all of this money making content. And at that earnings call, it came out that Disney is $4 billion in the hole because of streaming. And Bob Chapek's like, yeah, we'll make it up.
Yeah, acts like there was nothing wrong.
And he didn't offer anything. And now look what's happening. The entire business is sliding back into the network TV model of advertising. And so what was once this new business, and remember, the entire business has been restructured. Talent deals were changed around, and there was no more residuals, and people were getting buyouts and everything. Well, now it's going back to the TV model. And what about that little cheddar we're going to get? We got to get some of that ad revenue. You're dealing with an entire industry that is in the middle of turbulent waters. And all of this Bob Chapek business is, I think, a function of all that.
Yeah.
And they need a guy like Bob Iger because Bob Iger can weather this storm. He has a much bigger vision than Bob Chapek ever had.
And it should be pointed out, too, that Disney Plus is Bob Iger's baby. It's Bob Iger's brainchild.
Yes.
It's just that Bob Chapek ran it and used it in a very different way than Bob Iger would have.
And do you think, but didn't Bob Iger buy Pixar as well?
We bought Pixar. He bought Star Wars.
But Bob Iger's the kind of guy
Marvel.
that would know that, let's not put Pixar movies on Disney
Yeah,
Plus
I don't
first.
think Turning Red would have ended up on, like, Soul. I kind of understand because it was right at the height of everything, and you were kind of like, what are we going to do? And you can't, like, no theaters were open. But I saw Turning Red in the theater. They had a El Capitan. I went opening night.
I remember they did
It was
that
like
1 day
week
thing,
only,
yeah.
and I went. And it was amazing. People loved it, and it was like, I feel bad that the rest of the country never got that experience because they were like, just throw it up for. And it wasn't even a premium thing. It was just a freebie that they threw out for. Again, if you're not making any money from that subscription, then you're losing money.
All right, we actually got to move on because we're already out of time. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Are you like me, where I actually kind of feel a little bad for Bob Chapek the way it went down? Maybe you're like Cliff, where you feel like no sympathy for him at all. And all kidding aside, again, I have heard he's actually quite a nice gentleman, and we hope all the best for him. He can take the $50 million of the golden parachute that he's probably going to be very comfortable, and best of luck to his next endeavors. And we hope all good things for Bob Chapek, but it was time for him to go. Anyway, guys, how do you feel about all that? Whatever your thoughts are, jump into the comment section below and leave those thoughts there. All right, guys. So we've had about 27 topics today, which means we are at the end of when the show would normally end. But we want to at least take a couple of your questions before we go. So we're going to open up the super chat right now. Be real quick because we're only going to leave it open for like this long. Now, before we get to those live questions, we want to take a second and thank the main sponsor of our show, my mobile service provider, Ryan Reynolds, and his company, Mint Mobile.
Guys, we want to thank a sponsor of today's video, Mint Mobile. This holiday season, the best deal in wireless can only be found at Mint Mobile. Right now, when you switch to Mint Mobile and buy any 3-month plan, you'll get another 3 months free. As the first company to sell premium wireless service online only, Mint Mobile lets you order and activate from home with eSIM while saving tons on phone plans starting at just $15 a month. Guys, you know I've been using Mint Mobile long before this holiday deal, and I have to say, it is the perfect time to switch. Since I switched to Mint Mobile, I've been spending 1/3 of what I used to spend on my mobile service with the other big name company. And with this buy 3 months, get 3 months free, not only is it a great choice for you, but it makes great gifts for the people you love. Mint Mobile's best offer of the year is here. By going online only and with eSIM and eliminating the traditional costs of retail, Mint Mobile passes those significant savings on to you. All of their plans come with unlimited talk and text, plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and switch easily and effortlessly with eSIM. Or if you need a new device, for a limited time, get 6 months of free service when you buy a selected device and plan. So guys, for a limited time, buy any 3-month Mint Mobile plan and get 3 more months free by going to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea.
And thank you to our friends at Mint Mobile for giving me the best cell phone experience I've ever had, and for being a sponsor of the John Campea Show. Okay, with that down, we got time for just a couple of questions here. So let's get over to it. Kaylee, who got their questions in?
All right, first up, Darth says, thank you for your contribution. What do you think of Papa Iger doing a SASLab and making Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni heads of Lucasfilm? Filoni is basically Lucas 2.0, and both have their fingerprint in that universe.
This is the thing about Filoni, though. Filoni knows nothing about running a company, like at all. He's a storyteller, and I think he's going to make a really good live action director someday because he's got the right attitude. But other than that, I'm not sure how that qualifies him to fix my car, and I'm not sure how that qualifies him to run a company. Favreau is a little bit different. I could possibly see Favreau the way he's kind of been shepherding this whole thing. So maybe I could see him doing that, but you know what? It's probably going to end up being another. I don't want the person who makes the best movies necessarily. I want the person who knows how to empower and equip other people to make the best movies. And I don't know if Jon Favreau's that guy or not.
Peter Rice.
Maybe it's, oh my God, Peter Rice. Oh my God, Peter Rice would be perfect for that. Yeah, again, you're not looking for the best movie maker. You're looking for somebody who can best equip, empower, and delegate and allow others to go and make the best
And
movies.
everyone loves him.
And everybody loves Peter. Ooh, but again, I would be happy to if I heard Jon Favreau's name, but Rice is a great call. All right, what's next?
Next up, my five head. If Avatar 2 underperforms, under over 50% James Cameron blames Marvel movies.
Oh, James Cameron will blame Marvel movies if he steps on a nail tomorrow. Them damn Marvel movies did this to me. I don't know. I don't know why James Cameron, good Canadian kid, love James Cameron, love his movies. He's made my favorite action film of all time, True Lies. Love him. But he needs to shut his stupid mouth when it just comes to, because all he does when he starts whining and complaining and bitching, like we all do sometimes, but all he does is turn fans against him when he does it. So he just needs to shut up. Just shut up, James. Shut up. You make yourself look stupid. A little bit of Step Brothers there. Okay,
Don't
what's
bet
next?
against Jimmy C, buddies.
Yep.
Don't bet against him.
All right, what's next?
He's already blamed his runtime for ruining the movie. So
Yeah.
All right, what's
Okay, next up, Jim. Tom Brady is the best quarterback of all time, but if he became a coach, this should not shield him if he makes bad decisions. The same should apply to KK.
Oh no, I 100% agree. I think that's a great analogy. I think Kathy Kennedy, I agree with Spielberg. I think she's the greatest producer of all time. I think she's a fantastic producer. And while that should aid her in running the studio, it was clearly a job that I like the way that you kind of broke it down, Cliff. It's a job that she was not best suited for. And just because she's great at one thing clearly didn't mean she was great at another, which is one of the reasons why I'm like, Filoni is great. He knows stars, all that kind of stuff. Doesn't mean he knows how to run a company, though. So that's why a little bit on that. I'm really curious to see him start directing some more live action stuff because I think he's off to a good start. I think he's got the right attitude, and I want to see what he can do there. All right, what's next?
Next up, Suthius says, Brian T. Some might know him from The Wolverine, the second TMNT movie, or Mr. B's favorite Oscar caliber masterpiece, Tokyo Drift, is DK. But I've been binging Chicago Med, and he's a damn good actor.
I have no idea who he is. Who is he?
I don't know.
He's a guy named Brian T, who's an actor
Okay.
In the drift.
in the Drift.
Yeah, again, that's the most
you've
forgettable
seen him
Med.
here.
You've seen him.
Do we got a picture
here.
of him? Oh yeah, him. I love him.
He's the wannabe Yakuza.
Right. I watch Chicago PD. I don't watch Chicago Med or Chicago Fire or Chicago Tea Stand or Chicago Lemonade.
Yeah.
I don't watch any of those. But he's really great. Yeah, whenever I see him on stuff, I really like
He's
him.
Nice.
really good in the Drift. His smarmy, malevolent wannabe, but he was really, really good in the Drift.
All right. What's next?
Ridiculous.
All right,
here.
Suthius. All right, seconds from disaster.
Yeah.
Trim up your pumpkins. How often do you mess up the take from laughing when you record the Manscaped ads?
He takes it very serious.
Yeah. This. What are you talking about? This is art. My ad reads are art. I go method. I think about.
He gets his monocle.
I don't want to think about you going method on Manscaped.
When it
gets his
cuts
monocle
away,
in
he's
place
actually
there.
shaving himself. You guys don't see that.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
Next
right.
question.
All right. What's next?
Cody Hunt. Yesterday, I imagined Chapek's firing went down just like Osborne's in Spider-Man. Chapek, you can't do this to me. You know how much I've sacrificed?
You can't do this to me. We can and we have.
And they did.
You're out. Yeah. I mean, again, You're a dude and you work at a company for as long as he worked at Disney. And you serve faithfully, you do the best you can with whatever. Some people have different ideas about what kind of results he had. And then you get a shot at the top chair, at the throne. You're on the Iron Throne now. And instead of ruling a glorious 100 years of peace, you end up being Viserys and cut your finger on that Iron Throne, and it eventually kills you. And
and the worst part of this is, I guarantee you, this ruined Elton John for him. He will never be able to listen to Elton John ever again without a sharp pain in his side.
Turn that music off.
Yeah.
But again, don't feel too bad for
for
good old
he'll
Bobby
cry himself to
Chapek.
sleep on his bed of money.
He's walking away. He is laughing all the way to the bank, and maybe an earlier retirement than he thought. He's like, dude, I'm going to snort cocaine and play Xbox for the next 25
What do you think he was growing
years.
that beard for?
Yeah, I'm going to catch him on Xbox Live. He's fine.
Yeah, he's gonna be the next big Twitch streamer.
I'd watch.
I would too.
I would totally watch if Bob Chapek started streaming on Twitch. I
Or he
would
should
watch
start
that.
doing YouTube videos about Disney parks.
Oh my god.
That thing would blow up the internet.
All right, Al Renshaw. With Marvel having a panel at CCXP 22, what are some surprises you think we could get? Silver Surfer, F4cast, X-Men, etc.
You know what? CCXP in Brazil. By the way, can you look up the date of that for me, Taylor? When is the date for that? But that has increased. The last couple of years, we've been seeing that grow bigger and bigger and bigger, and more important things happen at it. I honestly wonder because, listen, D23, if you're a Star Wars or a Marvel fan, was a huge, wind of fart. It was just such a letdown. It was a big nothing burger and whatever. I wouldn't be shocked. I'm not predicting they will, but I wouldn't be shocked if they pull out some kind of big gun. Taylor, what?
We're just laughing at your analogy. And I was going to blow this, but it didn't work. So
So what if Feige hires Chapek to be the new Professor X, and they announce it wouldn't that be surprising?
Hey, I hear you got some free time,
Yeah.
Bobby. How'd you?
In a wheelchair.
Yeah, can you do an English accent? How about that? Did we get a?
Yeah, it's December 1st through the 4th.
You know what? Damn it! I want to see if I can get my passport renewed. Maybe go to that damn thing because you know what? I think there's a good chance something big does get announced there.
What city is
maybe
it in?
even some Fantastic Four
Louisville.
related.
Oh, well, the weather's nice that time of year.
Yeah. All right. What's next?
Summer.
Jay says, if this Disney situation was a movie, who plays Iger and who plays Chapek and who directs?
I think you're looking at Seth Rogen and James Franco. I think that's
He won't
the
work
only-
with James Franco, though.
That's the only way to go. That's the only way to go. All right. What's next?
Next up, Zach says, while I do sort of feel like this was dirty to Chapek, this just underscores the sense of urgency the board must be feeling. The Chapek boot is gone.
I'll tell you what. I think if he left that Elton John concert, tried to go back to Disney headquarters, I bet his fab key didn't work.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious. I think they knew
Savage.
they had to move quick because I think they were worried that if he knew he was out, that he might do some damage. But again, that's not uncommon, right? Like normally, if you work in a company and you get fired, the first thing they do is they escort you right out because there's a liability issue. They don't want anything. But maybe they were thinking that way about him. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we'll never know, or maybe we'll find out in the next year or two when somebody writes a memoir.
I got this vision of him with the stereo over his head, like, and say anything. The studio gates.
Like, do you think his email worked, or do you think they shut his email?
Oh, I bet
Oh, I
his
bet that
email
was
got
it.
shut off. I bet I bet the moment
they
they
just
did that, before
closed
they
that
notified,
tab.
before they even notified him, they probably, the IT department cut him off, all that kind of stuff. And I know that part sounds harsh, but that is the way
Right.
things are done. And it's,
Yeah.
it's kind of the way it has to be done. I get it.
I
All right.
commute every day. I drive right past the gates of Disney Studios every day going to and from work here. I was like 20 feet away from the walls of Disney looking up at now Iger's office. And I was just thinking last night on Buena Vista there, like, what is going on in that office right now?
Oh, to be a fly on the
It
wall
was just
there would
20
be
feet
so cool.
and then, up there. But
My wife sent me a photo last night that had a picture of the Disney studio in Burbank, and it had the white smoke, and it said the white smoke signifies the new CEO has been chosen.
They've got a new pope. I love that.
Yep.
Your wife's awesome, by the way.
She's pretty great.
I love your
I'm gonna
wife.
stay with her.
All right, what's
We stay with her.
what's
There we
next?
go.
Okay.
Zishwan says, what's the line, if any, where a YouTube video gets elevated into a film? The recent Defluctant video on Disney Channel theme was a
Defunctland.
great documentary.
Since I have no idea what we're talking about, Zishan, I can't offer any commentary,
neither.
unfortunately. I'm sure.
I mean, I think it just stays on YouTube. Defunct Land is, sorry, I'm all tied up here. No, Defunct Land's just a YouTube channel, and they go over, like, places that had some failures or drama around them. And they're great documentaries, but I mean, unless they sell it, that's where it's going to stay, YouTube.
Yeah, and
I've
the
watched
story
some of
doesn't
the
actually
stuff.
belong to them.
No, and they've done some good stuff, but it's a little like YouTube at large, which is like Rob knows this because we've done this before. When we do a documentary, we have to clear things and we have to license things, and you have to like get people's approval, and you have to do. The great thing about YouTube is people just go, "I'll just take that and do." So you can sort of do great documentaries because you don't have to clear things.
You don't have to follow
and
some
you don't have to
rules.
follow the rules. So I think that that stuff won't get elevated beyond what it is now, just because nobody's going
Right.
to take it and sell it because you can't.
Right.
Those filmmakers can elevate and move on
Yeah.
to bigger things.
yeah.
So
Okay, what's next?
Next up, Jay Bling says, as someone who wrote a 120-page script in about a week after 5 months of thinking about it, it initially boggled me how the initial Blade writers had 2 to 3 years to write a decent script and didn't.
I mean, if you don't have the right idea, then it almost doesn't matter. But again, I always go back to this one, and this is not the rule, but just an example. Infamously, Cabin in the Woods, right? Joss Whedon famously talks about how him and his co-writer, they literally wrote that script in a weekend. They literally sat down and wrote that script in a weekend. Now, they probably had to fine tune it and stuff like that. But I often, as somebody who's written scripts myself, I often is like, why did that take 3 years to write? Or 2 years
But
to write?
yeah, you're talking about professional writers that come out of TV, and
Yeah.
these are like the best writers in terms of learning how to write something quickly and get it down. I mean, 99% of the screenplays that are written are
we send to
bad.
Rob.
No, I
Don't
agree.
send it to me. They're bad. It's hard to write a great screenplay. Is really hard.
Oh, I completely agree.
And the worst part about it is everyone who's written a screenplay thinks they've written the greatest screenplay in the
Oh,
world.
yes, they do.
Well, and nobody said that the Blade screenplay was bad or was not good. What they're saying was that there were creative differences in terms of what they had written versus what they wanted to produce. And so in terms of what Kevin Feige sees for Blade moving forward, this script might not have met those needs.
Yeah, but we have talked to some people who were saying it was bad.
Oh.
They were saying that it was actually quite bad. But there's that.
Well,
All
I mean,
right,
it's like
we
we've
got to
said-
keep moving. We got to keep moving here. Okay, what's next?
Next up, Corey says, James Cameron really needs to come up for some fresh air. He has spent too much time recently smelling his own farts and calling it an elegant bouquet.
But here's the
talk
thing.
today.
Here's the thing. This is the thing though. When everything you put out turns into gold, when every single thing that you've put out turns to gold, and you personally hold 2 of the top 3 all-time, not 1, 2 of the top 3 all-time box office hits in history, with only one Avengers movie in between your number 1 and your number 3, you'll be forgiven if you think your farts have a little bit of a bouquet to it.
Come on, no one can smell farts underwater.
They're just
I
That's
bet
why
you
he created
can.
the suit where
can
your
see
face
them.
was exposed.
What is that, Shang-Chi? Somebody takes the air bubble and he grabs it and just breathes it in?
Wrong
That's a
bubble.
terrible thought.
Wow.
Wrong
Terrible.
bubble.
All right, what's next?
Next, Fry Minus. Did you hear Bob Chapek is out? Is that his
Yeah.
show?
Yeah, I think
that a
I heard
joke?
that. I think there was a rumor of that going around. All right, what's next?
All right, next up.
I think the
that
Zach.
it?
Did we do
Yeah,
Zach?
we got to do Zach.
Oh,
Zach.
okay.
Damn, that breakdown of SIX movies coming out this year was a savage indictment of Chapek. Think of how lame D23 was. Wasn't getting better.
Listen, I'll be honest with you. I don't blame, and maybe I should, but I don't know. I don't personally blame Bob Chapek for what a misfire D23 was. I don't think that was Bob Chapek's fault. But again, maybe there's other information that if I knew, I'd go, oh yeah, that was Bob Chapek's. But I don't personally hold him responsible for what did or did not happen in this case at D23. I don't think we can start blaming everything on him. So there's that. All right, what's next?
Next, Jai CSC. Who has the tougher job of pulling their studio up from the current low points, Iger or Zaslav? And what would be the success criteria?
I think Zaslav does, because
Yeah.
Bob Iger is walking into this situation where there's still a number of his lieutenants were still there. It hasn't been that long. The whole company's behind him. They're all celebrating, all that kind of stuff. With Zaslav, they are walking into an utter mess. And the more information that comes out about the status of Warner Brothers when it was still under AT&T, it just gets looking worse and worse and worse and worse. So, hey, listen, Iger doesn't have an easy job in front of him, and I'm not 100% guaranteed sure that Iger's going to be able to pull it off. But I think Iger's situation is a little bit more palatable and easier than Zaslav's currently.
Well, and he's
is.
coming in to basically fix something the way he left it.
Yes,
He's not
yeah.
coming into somebody else's thing and going, okay, how do I fix this? He has a template for, well, we know this worked and it worked very well. So he has the ability to now come in and go, how do we get the ship back on track and off the divergent path that it was on?
Yep, absolutely. Okay, what's next?
The Swifties.
By the way, Mark24 Gaming just sent in a super chat to be supportive. Thank you, Mark.
The Swifties. If they make a biopic of Elon Musk, I want them to cast Kathy Bates as Elon.
Yeah. Elon
saw
is
that.
an interesting, I don't know,
Is
psychotic.
it possible he's not a great businessman?
No, here's the thing. I think it's like anything else we were talking about before, right? I think a lot of us confuse us when we find something we're really good in. We think that means we're good at everything. Listen, I'm an admirer of Elon Musk. I really am. Like, he makes the best cars. I own 2 of them. I love his cars. He's been one of the foremost voices in the world of climate change and our need to shift our energy dependency from fossil fuels and crap like that over to sustainable, renewable energy. I've got a lot of respect for him in a lot of different ways. But man, every day you can see the fires burning higher at Twitter. You know what? Here's the thing. I saw one guy online talking about this the other day. Everybody forgets Elon didn't actually want to buy Twitter.
Right.
He just
He got stuck
chest
with it.
puffed so much about it and played like he wanted to buy it that he backed himself into
He
a
screwed
legal
himself.
war
44
where
billion
he
screwed.
tried to get out of buying it.
Yeah.
And they're like, nah, too late, man. You talk the talk. Now you got to buy it. And he had to drop 40-something billion dollars on it. And not looking good. Not looking good. Just because you're great at one thing. And I think he's great at a lot. It doesn't mean you're great at everything.
But this is the one thing where it's like, it's him.
Yes.
He doesn't have a team around
No,
him.
he fired all of them.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So all of these decisions are, this is what he's doing. And you're like, maybe Tesla's great despite you, not necessarily because of you.
Here's where, to get serious for a second, this is the part that I actually find very scary, is that there is no greater tool in the world right now for disseminating false information than Twitter. He gutted their entire mod division. They're gone. And while it's funny and we all joke about it, you know, the RIP Jimmy Fallon thing that started going around like crazy, and Twitter did nothing about it, to the point that even Jimmy Fallon had to get on Twitter and say, hey, Elon, can you do something about this? Now, this is just a little thing, right? Just a little thing. But when you talk about being in a culture and a society that is so on the knife's edge, we've already seen in our culture that one lie that can spread as fast as a tsunami can lead to actual violence. And where I get a little bit nervous and apprehensive that we're already seeing that. We saw all these fake blue checkmark things popping up and like these things going, it's like, no, it should just be a free for all. We're talking about a thing now that can be used to disseminate false information real fast. And while we're laughing at the Jimmy Fallon thing right now, it could lead to something literally mortal. And it's a little bit scary. And I hope that's something that gets addressed and gets fixed.
Well, yeah, I mean, manipulating markets, things like that. One wrong tweet or one lie. I wish I could come up with something about myself that I could benefit my financial situation, but I can't think.
All right, is that it? Are we done?
Yeah, that's it.
All right, guys, that'll do it for today's really long installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for being here and making this show part of your day. Big special thank you for those of you guys who did send in super chats. Sorry for the rest of you that we had to shut it down so fast. Don't worry, we've got an open mic coming, and if you got some questions or comments, we will address those a little bit later today at 3 p.m. You know, I'm going to bump that to 3:30 p.m. Los Angeles time. So come on back and join us for open mic. So for everybody in the room, we got Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett, 4-time Saturn Award winner, Cliff Stevenson. Thank you for being here today, Cliff.
My pleasure.
Of course, Ray has been over there joining you guys in the live chat. Taylor back there. Jonathan Boyko running the show. Kaylee's been here. My name's John Campea, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. And until next time, my friends, bye-bye.